Okay, members, we'll commence the meeting in just under 1 minute from now. Okay, Rachel, online, is those people? No.
It's just officers.
Online,
I know, but I just put it in Jenny chat messages.
Aye, very good. Okay, members, welcome to the April meeting of Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. As you know, this is the final council meeting of this mandate, which is a significant milestone. So tonight we're operating from the Grange in Omagh, and people are looking on variously online, and some of our officers may be in attendance on WebEx, as I understand it as well. So there you have it. Great turnout in the chamber, and it's nice to see, isn't it? And before I go to apologies, there's one perhaps proud announcement I should make on behalf of the council, in that you may know that one of our employees, Tracy McKellen, won Local Government Employee of the Year. That was nice, wasn't it? And that was awarded, yeah. And that was awarded to Tracy by the William Johnson Trust. I was party with others to hosting the event here, and Tracy was brought along under false pretenses, isn't that right? Do you want to say a word or two, Alison, on that?
Certainly, Chair. Well, just as you've indicated, it's really a very significant achievement for Tracy from across the 11 councils, and she was recognised really for the work that she has done on the Levelling Up application, also on all of the COVID regeneration work, the branding across each of the main county towns, as well as the, I suppose, general integrated work across a number of directorates, most notably community health and wellbeing and regeneration and planning. But there were entries, 11 entries in total. I know from the judging, they indicated there was a very high standard, but they commended both her application and the contribution that she has made to the council. So certainly from our perspective, Chair, we're really delighted for her, but for her wider team as well. And I think it's really a great tribute, again, to our officers and the work that people are doing every day on behalf of the council.
Okay, thanks very much, Alison. Now, I want to move to apologies. Item 1 on your agenda, and on Cade Cantor, Corlior Tomas McGear. I'll bring you into play, Tommy.
Gormaga Carley, August and Cade Road, Cogardius to Tracy. First thing is to pass on our congratulations to Tracy on her prestigious award. Na Leskil group of Henfian and Octa Berchan, Leskil O Corlior Anne-Marie Fitzgerald, August Corlior Catherine Kelly. Two apologies, one from Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald and one from Catherine Kelly. By Corlior Glenn Campbell, Jock Nismullia. Councillor Campbell will be joining us later on. Gormagan.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maguire. I go now to Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair, and certainly on behalf of our group, and to congratulate Tracy as well. No apologies from the Ulster Unionist group tonight, and if you give me a wee bit of latitude, Chair, please. As you're probably all aware, there was yet another fatal accident at the bottom of right beside where I live today. Unfortunately, it's been the 5th fatality in 10 years within about a half a mile radius. And again, we send our sincere sympathy to the family. But I just also want to mention, it's my understanding that the young fella who unfortunately was killed was a relation of Councillor Green's, And I say certainly from the Ulster Unionist grouping on the council, we send our sincere apologies.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for that. I'll go now to Councillor Paul Robinson. Paul.
On behalf of the EP, just like to congratulate for her winning the award. And there's no apologies from the DEP, and I'd just like to sympathise with Councillor Green in the sudden death of the husband.
Okay, thank you. And moving now to Councillor Garrity.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies for our grouping tonight, and like others have alluded to, many congratulations to Tracy. That's a huge achievement across 11 councils and shows that Fermanagh and Omagh District Council are leading the way again, and many congratulations to her. And I was unaware that that was a relative of Seamus's, and so again, on behalf of our grouping, condolences to the family at this very sad time indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and I'll go now to the description sometimes is smaller parties and independents. Are there any apologies? We're in the apologies section. If there aren't any indications. Okay. Emmett?
Chair, as far as I'm aware, Councillor Keenan is joining online, so I'm not sure he had apologies, just may have been slightly late, but just to again echo the sentiments previously expressed in terms of the congratulations for Tracy, and obviously our condolences with Councillor Green and his family at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Deehan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I too want to join in sincere congratulations to Tracy McCallan on her Local Government Employee of the Year. This is a magnificent achievement of Tracy, and she is deserving of our highest praise and admiration, and I want to send her my personal congratulations. And Chair, it is sad news that Councillor Warrington brings us this evening of the loss of yet another young life on our treacherous roads, and I do want to express my sincere condolences to Councillor Green and members of his family on their sad loss. Chair, thank you.
Councillor Swift?
Gurmagat Caherlock, and I too want to share in the fabulous congratulations to Tracy on her marked achievement. Very well done to her in making our council such a proud place again. So very well done to Tracy, and also thank Victor now for raising the very sad and tragic news. And I send my sincere condolences to Seamus and all of the Green family. Gurmagat.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, members, we're moving on now to an outgoing matter, we'll call it. As you know, and if you don't know, you ought to know. David Trimble used to say that. I just wanted to try it out once. He used to say, the member ought to know. Now, the member knows fine well, and if he doesn't know, he ought to know. But there's upcoming council elections in May. 18th. Anyway, but some of our councillors who are present have indicated, variously, and they can choose to speak here and now if they wish. But I have a number of understandings with councillors who are saying that they're not running again. They're not running again in the context of the upcoming election. So I want to afford those who I have chatted privately to about this, and some that I haven't spoken privately to about it, if you're not running in the upcoming council elections, you've made it known or whatever, and you wish to avail of this opportunity to have your say, as you say bye-bye to local government for a while at least. So the first speaker that I would like to go to is Councillor Alex Baird.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I was just thinking running at my age, walking's an effort, but that's a different matter. Little did I realise on the 31st of October 1966, when I arrived in Enniskillen to take up my first job in the drainage office, Westbridge House, Enniskillen, having left school in Dungannon that June, that some 56 years plus later, I would be making a retirement speech as a councillor in FODC. I was first elected for Fermanagh District Council on 5th of May 2005, and accordingly will have completed 18 years service as a councillor for Earn West on both FDC and FODC. I can honestly say that I've thoroughly enjoyed my time as a councillor, but as Geoffrey Chaucer said, all good things must come to an end, or in other words, jump before you're pushed. I believe that at my age, the time has come for me to step aside and make way for a younger person. Notice the gender, maybe I'm learning. From a personal perspective, I believe that the highlights of my political career have been the 2 terms I served as chairman of FDC, and I thank my party colleagues past and present for putting their trust in me. They were 2 wonderful years. The merger of FDC and ODC, which created the new FODC, was a challenge to us all, and I think we're getting there with the identity of the area well established. Over the years, we as councillors got to know each other, and respect for each other, whether grudging or genuine, was established. As politicians, we naturally had our differences on policy and sometimes disagreed, but we agreed to disagree in a mannerly and generally courteous and respectful way. Unfortunately, in the current mandate, the Chamber, whether in person or virtually, has become a less pleasant and respectful forum than it used to be. There's been disrespect and bad manners shown to fellow councillors, the council chairman, committee chairs, and indeed officers, with a disregard to standing orders. Indeed, an air of toxicity at times pertained. Council, like wider society, has rules which must be adhered to. I would hope that those responsible will have learned from their experiences and, if re-elected to the new mandate, will become house-trained in the political sense, thus ensuring a harmonious forum. Now, I can't not mention COVID. As a council, we managed it well, but I believe that remote meetings had a negative and indeed detrimental effect on relations. It should be noted that many relationships were established and barriers broken down during the pre-meeting sustenance. It's a nice word. Even though there were some negative media comments about the number of chicken coujons we ate. I hope in the new mandate the situation returns. I also look fondly on the discussion and indeed crack we had in the old FDC when it was customary for the chairs to invite their colleagues for refreshments after the council meeting. Perhaps this again is something that consideration be given to and resurrected.
Down with that sort of thing.
Are you buying? Can I thank the officers present and past for the effective, efficient and professional way in which they carried out their duties. It can't have been easy dealing with the range of councillors and their needs, wants and various foibles. Now, I worked for 38 years in the civil service before I became a councillor. And some people have said I was employed, but I did work, and can testify that local government is a much tighter ship and better value for money. To my UUP colleagues past and present, thanks for putting up with me. Now, most of us as councillors will have a wife, husband or significant other, or whatever the appropriate term is nowadays, at home, without whom we would have been less effective and who acted as our unpaid secretary, sounding board, advisor, critic, receptionist, the list is endless. In that vein, I want to pay tribute to my wife, Joy, who was always beside me or behind me, giving me the support. I couldn't have done what I did without her. So looking to the future, naturally, I don't know what it holds for me, but I intend to relax, at least initially, and spend some more time with my grandchildren, Oliver and Phoebe. Now, some people ask me, have I any regrets? As Frank Sinatra said, regrets? I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do and saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and more, much more than this, I did it my, and the Ulster, and the Ulster Unionist way was what I was going to say. But you just ruined that. Look, finally, folks and colleagues and officers, I give you a salute and quote from Mr. Spock of Star Trek fame. Live long and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Well done. That's great. I thought Roy added value to what you were doing there. Okay. Next up will be Councillor Bernice Swift, and this came as a shock today to me.
Garamagat Cahirlock. My day has come. That needs no translation. But I have decided that after 18 years of steadfast public service, where I have represented to the very best of my ability, above and beyond, it is now time for me to do something new, And to that end, I leave local government politics and will not be seeking re-election on the 18th of May. But I'm going to embrace a new phase of life, and it's going to be a working life, 9 to 5, with the gratitude of being healthy, fit and well to do so, and I thank God for all my blessings into my life's next chapter, and so the new journey begins for me. Rolling through 18 years since 2005, when I was first elected for Sinn Féin, I resigned from Sinn Féin after a short period because of their policy position in providing political support and endorsing British policing in Ireland, of which I was and I remain opposed to today. But thereafter, I stood liberated and shackle-free as an independent Republican, successfully proven by getting elected on 3 different occasions by the very good people of Erne West Fermanagh. And I wish to thank them most sincerely because of giving me their #1 vote, where in return I can categorically state their needs were never forgotten by me as their hard-working councillor. I am the first and only female independent ever elected in Fermanagh Council and the first female independent elected within the new 6-county super councils, and all of which has been no mean feat and quite the accomplishment. And I did it all with the vigour and tenacity that I possess. And being an independent female councillor for the past 18 years is actually impossible to sum up in a matter of minutes. Therefore, I've decided to leave that to my memoirs. And particularly as having reflected on the abundance of meetings and workshops attended and experiences therein, having read through my countless emails over the past number of months, some so funny and some not so funny, the half of it I'd even forgotten. So the copious correspondence, both business, official and sensitive, that we deal with, all from the varied and complex bodies I dealt with as a public rep, and thereafter noting all my contributions, elations and the vexatious, along with the vast array of unseen work that a busy councillor does, and the many, many enjoyable chairmans and civic reception events that we had for my people in Erne West. It really would take a whole This Is Your Life, a tell-all series to give my story justice in relaying it all back to everyone. So that's just going to have to wait for now. But this period of time, 2005 to 23, as an elected representative, has been one massive chapter of my life, and it's actually been my longest serving role ever in one place. So I now take my active energy to a whole new place. And I'd like to think that during my tenure that I spearheaded a lot of good ideas within the council and trailblazed on a lot of significant campaigns and very meaningful quests that have actually made a difference to the lives of the people and my constituents. But the list is too long for tonight. But a few that immediately sprung to mind where I was the first person to mention. My first human rights motion away back in 2005, supporting Father Gabriel Dolan in Kitale, Kenya, after his protest in demanding back the repossession of grabbed land. And I'm proud to say that Father Gabriel is tuned in tonight from Kitale, listening to my farewell speech. I called on support for the undocumented Irish living in the USA, and that's a campaign a lot of people will remember. I was the first to pressure central government to resolve the flooding issue in Bow and was appointed thereafter to the Drainage Council, and I kept Bow firmly on top of the agenda, and colleagues helped with all of that. I was the first to get support in Fermanagh Council to ban fracking when other people thought that that was something to do with computers. There you are. I was the first to speak out against a bad rural education policy and was proudly part of the campaigns to save Brala and St Aidan's post-primary education in Fermanagh. And I'm glad to say that I attended the Mass which celebrated 50 years of St Aidan's last week over in Derlin. I was foremost and demanded digital equality for the mobile mass and ultra-fast broadband for the West, and that included thereafter the whole Super Council area. I was the first on some topical farming issues within the Steadfast Agriculture Liaison Group, a great group they are. And for our play park strategy, It was Councillor Bernice Swift's vote that ensured the council's vision became a reality, you will remember. And I'm delighted that 2 upgrades have already taken place in my DEA. And it was tried and tested out energetically, as you will know, Cahirlock, where I ziplined through Belcoo and trampolined on the rushing, all supported by my lovely little cousins who are also tuned in tonight. So hello to Tierna and Ciara. I was the first to raise the importance of promoting dark skies in keeping with our climate action policy and preserving the celestial beauty of the night sky, an accreditation of which I do look forward to seeing coming into fruition. Most recently, I was also in support of a proposal that I had brought back many years ago on the boycott, divestment sanctions for the people of Palestine. And thereafter, you will know my most recent action for everyone who suffers the perennial pothole issue. I worked relentlessly and I did manage for you all to secure a free demo to facilitate the problem and to facilitate the Pothole Pro machine coming here to Fermanagh. I did try my very best to get that done before all of this, to get it done and dusted, but alas, that was out of my control, and then Purda kicked in. But mid-June, that's happening, and I will still be available to drive that machine wherever you want me to go, okay? But it is all over to you from here on in on that score. So pondering that abbreviated list, Cahirlock, right from the Legacy Council, my undertakings were well-meaning and far-reaching. I am satisfied to leave a decent Councillor Swift legacy behind. There were times when political differences were acrimonious. However, I believe I always managed some crack August scale, and most of the rancour during meetings was forgotten over a beverage afterwards, where it all ended, and that was good most of the time. There was no Prosecco in those days, or even still. I propose Prosecco. Do I have a seconder? I'll second it. Anyway, getting elected as an independent right across Erin West involved much canvassing, as you will know, collecting postal votes, speaking outside churches, chapels, postering, watching them go up with differing hairstyles and seeing some of them pulled down and defaced. But that didn't stop or deter me. And I would like to think I have always been approachable. And people that you might think would never even contact a resolute Republican for help, well, that's just it. My personal and professional attributes crossed all divides, shades, and many barriers. I wear my heart on my sleeve, as you know, and what you see is what you get. And what people actually got was a committed councillor who was trying her very best to make a difference on their behalf. And throughout the many political upheavals all over the years, I held my beliefs and my principles, and I proudly state here tonight, still, I serve neither king nor Kaiser, but Ireland, just in case you might have forgotten. Anyway, through local government council, I succeeded in a master's level 7 in citizenship, all of which was rather detailed and also very rewarding. A lot of hard work went into that. And suffice to say that our Fermanagh and Omagh District Council did outshine at the graduating, and all of those who were successful know all about that. And we certainly had a good time in succeeding. During these very busy 18 years, I got married to Kevin, and he has had to share me with my public service time away on council meetings and with council-related business. Thankfully, he too is politically driven, and we share the same Republican objectives and ambitions, but no more sharing. I will no longer have to bring the council laptop with me on my holidays to log on to WebEx or for evening meetings such as was my commitment to do so. Instead, I'll be enjoying happy hour every hour. And I'll text some of you just for badness during a council meeting to say, wish you were here. I must acknowledge and say thanks to Kevin for his patience and his unequivocal support. My success could not have happened without him. I want to thank my parents. They took lots of messages and assisted greatly in my council representation for all people. I thank my wonderful family, my brother Declan, who's tuned in tonight from New York City, and my auntie Geraldine and my cousin and godson Nevin, who are also tuned in from New York City, and right across Fermanagh and Ireland tonight. I want to thank my election agent, Robin Martin, who is my father-in-law, and former Fermanagh Council Chairman, most of you already know. And I must not forget my mighty election team, all of whom are my very best friends and all residing from the villages of the DEA where I was elected from. A mightier team you couldn't have, and I thank them most sincerely. More friends to thank are, during my tenure, the 3 chief executives that I have experienced and very much liked and appreciated them all for all of their work and indeed the crack, and there was plenty of it. I thank them most sincerely for all of their assistance to me over the 18 years. And I particularly thank you, Alison, for absolutely everything you have done. Also in Fermanagh and Omagh Council, I want to thank all of the past and current dedicated directors, along with all of the council's assiduous teams, to each and every single individual council employee who I've ever worked with, who I've ever liaised with. I thank them most sincerely from the bottom of my heart for all their meticulous swift action in helping me arrive at swift solutions for our super council citizens. I can categorically state there really isn't a more dedicated, professional, visionary council staff like ours anywhere else. And I say that without bias. How great thou art. Thank you, councillors, both past and present. It really was a displeasure. Pleasure, pleasure. Working with you for the betterment of our constituents. I will miss you, but not too much. Each and every one of you, without a doubt, I will never forget you, and it has certainly been an adventure. Within council, I didn't like it much whenever the reality of chief executive staff or councillors were either sadly departing, retiring, or moving on to pastures new, as I always felt their absence was going to be sorely missed. And you might recall I used to say, it was very hard to wave goodbye and smile at the same time. But in this very similar situation and occasion, I can honestly say it is with complete happiness and contentment that I smile and I wave goodbye to you all tonight and to all my constituents. So in conclusion, I believe that I have worked very well as a councillor.
Only joking, Bernice, but your 3 minutes are up.
That's what I'm going to miss, the crack August tune. I believe that I have worked very well as a councillor and I enjoy the crack. I have a few matters to tidy up and conclude on. In local government, with everybody I have ever worked with, if it didn't happen, that wasn't my fault, okay? I believe I've served my electorate steadfastly, faithfully and wholeheartedly, and so I happily and respectfully close the door on being a councillor for 18 years, serving the people of Erin West Fermanagh. I bid you all a very fond farewell. So go Mila Mayagav, Becky Mayrish, Son August Bonnet, Councillor Bernice Swift.
Well done, Bernice. Say what you really think. Okay, and the third that is indicated to me along these lines is Corleor Christor McAfee.
Caithirlí a ball tuffa ifig agus for na Corlia a charge agus ina uisle. Níl scríb láirt na insibéal agam na blianta a churthagam mar bhall tuffa den Gorlia seo. Anar mó héal a bhíon agus a bhéasán go Joe con ionaíochta dhéanamh bhaintear ar manach agus na homí le ceithre bliana anuas. Tá mé fé comín agah go léir. Chair, elected members, council officers and staff, ladies and gentlemen. Well, how can you describe these last 4 years except by saying that it has been a tremendous privilege and honour? While politics and public life is not without its challenges, these have been a truly wonderful 4 years. I am privileged enough to have been trusted to represent my local area where I grew up in and to have been in a position to help other people and hopefully to have touched other people's lives. And I couldn't have done any of this without the support of all the people who elected me and supported me. And I want to express my deepest gratitude to you all. Thank you to my family, friends and loved ones for all their patience, and a special word of thanks to the Erin West communities of Timor, Derrylin, Acklamad, Canolly, Kalesher Arnie, Benelec, Florence Court, Belcoo, Mullockdun, Letterbreen, Bow, Derrigonley, Cashel and Garrison for their support in electing me in 2019. Throughout these years, we overcame emergencies such as the COVID-19 pandemic, secured long-awaited funding for improvements to the A509 road at Derryhowley, and delivered 2 new council policies on Irish language. Some of you may know I have an interest in that kind of thing. And of climate change, which the Resilience Group I was very proud to have been chairman of for the past 4 years. And I again praise all the members of that group for the work they did. Together, we protected local community interests and secured funding for community groups and projects. Indeed, this is a council that works hard to protect the public health, community health and environmental health of all the citizens in our district. I was also deeply honoured to serve as the youngest ever vice chair of this council at age 25, which is an experience that I will never forget. I have learned a few things in local government throughout the past few years. One is that if everything is going well and smooth sailing and there are no arguments, or should I say debates, then something is seriously wrong. The second is that the contribution of everyone here is deeply appreciated, valued, and always listened to, provided you are within the 3-minute speaking time, of course. I would like to pay tribute to my council colleagues and my party colleagues. I wish you all the best of luck in the upcoming elections. And I suppose finally, I am not closing the door in politics. This is something that I would like to do again in the future if I am lucky enough to be afforded the opportunity. I don't view it as a retirement, but maybe as I'll be coming back in a couple of years, please, if I can. More of a farewell for now. I am a proud Irish citizen, a proud Republican, and I will continue to work and campaign for Irish unity, which I care passionately about, and for the promotion of the Irish language and culture, and for equal rights and inclusion for everyone. There are still massive challenges which need to be faced, such as the current SWA crisis and the economic cost of living crisis, and I will continue to work and fight on these issues and others, and to represent my native Fermanagh however I can. So once again, I thank the people of the Erin County for all the support. I am truly indebted to you all. Níl sa sé seo ach cio agus ní bhaimid bio ach sealbog garage go ra agus bla orv galéir.
Thank you, Chris. Now, you'll appreciate members who won't be opening it up to the floor, right, this matter, but I will ask the Chief Executive maybe to respond to the 3 speakers and just the moment that we're in.
Well, no, Chair, thank you. Just maybe to formally put on record, not just our 3 outgoing members who've declared their intention not to stand, but really to wish you all well in the forthcoming elections. I think looking back over the last 4 years, and a number of the speakers have referenced it this evening, really less than 9 months into your term, we had COVID, followed rapidly by a cost of living crisis, followed by linked to the Ukrainian invasion, and all supplemented by the changing face of the world in terms of climate change and the real practical impacts it's having on our society. I don't think anyone would have envisaged when you convened for the first time in June 2019 that you would have been facing all of that change and really the maelstrom of the world that we've come through in the intervening period. I just thought as well, maybe, Chair, it would be appropriate to recognise that we have, over the course of the 4 years, had some changes within our elected members, and just to also recognise the contribution of those members who have departed. So Councillor Howard Thornton in Enniskillen, Councillor John McCluskey in Erin East, Councillor Siobhan Curry in Erin North, Councillor Deborah Armstrong as she was elected, but Councillor Deborah Erskine as she left in Erin North. In Mid-Tyrone, Councillor Bert Wilson. We also obviously had the tragic loss of Sean Donnelly during this term, and Councillor Chris Smith, who served in Omagh. So quite a bit of change from a councillor team over the 4 years, quite a bit of change from the officer team as well, to the extent that when we have the election counts commencing on the 19th of May, it's essentially a full new team in place as well. So hopefully that will go well. But just again, members, to thank you all for the service you've given. I hope you've enjoyed, notwithstanding all of the challenges the last 4 years. Look forward to seeing you over the course of, well, really from next week for nominations, and certainly to see you back in Omagh Leisure Centre on the 19th of May.
Thank you, Alison, for that. Okay, members, if we go to our agenda now, we are at item 2, right? So we're going to confirm and sign the minutes of the council meeting held on the 7th of March. That was in the town hall, that and via WebEx as well. So 15 pages, and this is for accuracy only. So page 1, page 2, 3, 4 and 5, page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, page 12, 13, 14, and 15. Okay, so we'll take a proposer and a seconder. Victor here and Councillor Thompson, Councillor Warrington and Councillor Thompson proposed and seconded, and that's agreed, members. Okay, so item 3 in the agenda is relating to the local development plan, LDP, the special council meeting that we held on that matter on the 16th of March. That's paper B. And that amounts to 8 pages. And Councillor Buchanan, sorry, no, wasn't it? It was Councillor Buchanan. Sorry. Special council, sorry, that's myself. Okay. No problem. Just accuracy only then, just the 8 pages. Okay, page 1, page 2, page 3, 4 and 5, page 6, page 7, and page 8. And I'll take a proposer and a seconder. Councillor John Coyle and Councillor Roy Crawford proposed and seconded. Okay, and that's agreed, members. Okay. Now we're at a point in the meeting where we do declarations of interest. Alison, do you want to state a declaration?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Correspondence item 14.3, just for noting, please, Chair, but I will declare.
Okay, so I'm looking around the room. No one has indicated, and no one has indicated on WebEx either. So moving on then, we are going to rearrange the order a little bit. We'll come to items 5 and 6 soon, but I'm going to proceed to items 7 to 13 inclusive next, right? So it's important that we get the adoption of these meetings. So item 7 then, to confirm the minutes of the planning committee meeting held on the 22nd of February. And we've got to go through each page individually. Okay, so that's page 1. Okay, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Councillor O'Reilly, are you waiting to I know what you're at. Thanks, Thomas. Anticipating that you'll propose. Okay, so I think it was at page 8, page 9, page 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, page 15, 16, 17 and 18, 19 and 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25.
I'm happy to propose the minutes of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. And have we a seconder then? Councillor Thompson caught my eye first there. Thank you. So that's agreed, members. Okay, next up is item 8, to confirm the minutes of the Environmental Services Committee meeting held on 8th of March, paper D, 12 pages in this. And John will be looking to you. Okay, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Thank you, Chair, and propose the adoption of the minutes of the Environmental Services Committee held.
Thanks, Councillor McLaughlin, and have a seconder. I've got Paul Stevenson there indicating. Thank you. Councillor Stevenson, that's great. So, and agreed, members. So then number 9 on the agenda, the Brexit committee meeting. And I think we've got Councillor Keenan online. To confirm the minutes of the Brexit Committee meeting held on the 9th of March, paper E, and just 4 pages in this one. So page 1. Yep. Thank you, Councillor Dean.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I believe I recorded an apology for that meeting, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Page 2, page 3, and page 4. Councillor Keenan. Just short delay. So though a member that was present then to propose.
Yeah, I'll propose, Chairman.
Thanks, Councillor Keenan and Councillor Garrity, willing to second. Thanks, Eamon and Mary. That's proposed and seconded. So item number 10, to confirm the minutes of R&C, as we call it, Regeneration and Community Committee meeting. Mark, Councillor Buchanan is our chair there. And that meeting was held on the 14th of March, paper F. So 18 pages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, page 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. I can go to Councillor Buchanan.
Happy to propose the minutes of the Regeneration Community Committee. Thank you,
Thanks
Chair.
very much. And Councillor Robinson, quick to second. Thank you. Okay. And agreed, members. So moving on to item 11. This is the one where Councillor Thompson is our chair. Errol. So to confirm the minutes of Policy and Resources, P&R, committee meeting held on the 15th of March, paper G. So 15 pages in all, page 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Chair, just on page 4, it's to advise members of a transcription error in the report which related to the service pricing model. So it was on the regional property certificate unit pricing, which indicated 15% in the table instead of 20%, which was the read across from the report. So just to note that amendment would be required, Chair, please.
Okay, thank you. That was page 4. Okay. Page 5. Page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I'll invite Councillor Thompson in now.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy to propose the minutes of the Policy and Resources Committee with the amendment included. Thank you.
Okay, have we got a seconder? Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly, thank you. That's those minutes adopted in that sense. Okay. Okay, so we're now at item 12, paper H, and we'll look to Councillor O'Reilly again. He was assisted in that occasion with Councillor Maguire stepping in, but we'll go to Councillor O'Reilly if he's happy to propose whenever we reach that point. So 13 pages, paper H, and planning committee meeting held on the 22nd of March. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Councillor O'Reilly.
Chairman, I'm happy to propose the minutes of the planning meeting of the 22nd of March until the point that I relinquish the chair to my colleague, Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Okay, thank you. And I'll look for a seconder. Okay, Councillor Irvine has seconded. That's fine. Thanks very much. And agreed. And then we'll go to item 13. And I think in Councillor Green's absence, this was chaired by Councillor Swift. So this would be the audit panel meeting held on the 21st of March, paper A, and 7 pages for accuracy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'll go now to Councillor Swift.
Opposed.
Thanks very much. And Councillor Robinson got in first there as the seconder. Okay, thanks very much. And so we'll go back now to our sequence. Okay.
Remaining minutes.
For items 17 to 23 inclusive. We don't anticipate this will take long, but protocol, we need to go into committee to deal with items 17 to 23 inclusive. So thanks to Councillor Coyle and Councillor Irvine for proposing and seconding that we do that. So we're going to go into committee, items 17 to 23 inclusive, we're going to be dealing with now. Get a wee indication? And we're out. That's good. There you go.
Thank you, Chair. While in committee, the Council confirmed and signed the confidential minutes of the Council meeting held on the 7th of March, and there were no matters arising, and also confirmed the confidential minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 22nd of February, of the Environmental Services Committee meeting held on the 8th of March, confidential minutes of Regeneration Community held on the 14th of March, the Policy and Resources Committee held on the 15th of March, and the confidential minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 22nd of March, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Deehan proposes, and have I got a seconder? Councillor Buchanan, thank you. Okay. Yes, so we're now at matters arising in relation to the council meeting of the 7th of March. Okay, so again, go page by page. Page 1, page 2, page 3. Okay.
Okay, Chair, just we've a few items of correspondence in relation to page 3. Firstly, in relation to the first set of resolutions, which was regarding the energy payments, we've received correspondence, firstly from Neil Gibson, who's the Permanent Secretary in the Department of Finance, and that's in relation to the use of the pointer system. And you'll see the indications are that that will be mandatory from the 31st of October this year. And there is also a letter from Click Energy in relation to the clarification that have been provided or requested regarding the scheme, the funding and the general payments. And Chair, if I might just also refer members at this juncture to the correspondence that's in your other folder. And it's just received earlier today, and it's from, sorry, just it's the new name, it's the Department of for Energy Security and Net Zero. It's just item 8 within your other correspondence, and that's responding to the queries again that were set out in the letter, but also regarding the administration, indicating that there's no formal administration fee for the companies in question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks. I take it we're dealing with 5.1 at this stage, not 5.2 as well, yeah? Just 5.1.
Just 5.1, yeah.
Yeah, in which case, obviously the correspondence in relation to the energy support bill scheme, and then it ends up talking about the pointer address product. I know other councillors have raised this, but my understanding is that the point being made here is directly contrary to the assurances that was afforded to the predecessor council in relation to the use of pointer by private sector businesses. I do note that they state the pointer address product is licensed and made available to customers. However, they have no powers to compel use of it. I think that that's genuinely quite disingenuous when my understanding is that the legacy from Fermanagh District Council only agreed to the adoption of the pointer system pursuant to guarantees made at that time that the pointer system would be universally adopted, and therefore the sort of confusion that we've seen around the energy payments could be avoided. And there's a significant regressive impact in terms of the lack of emphasis on townlands. They're a very important part of the heritage of this part of the world. And I think Fermanagh District Council was the last district council in Northern Ireland to retain the townlands as a system of address. However, these assurances were provided, and now we're at a stage when it is clear that these assurances had absolutely no standing or grounds whatsoever. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bale.
Thank you, Chair. And if Councillor O'Coffey proposed a note, I'm happy enough to second the note. And if you allow me a little bit of latitude, Chair, I would like to make a proposal. The energy support scheme has been relatively well rolled out at this point, and I would imagine most people have received the money. However, from my experience talking to my constituents, there seems to be one company is a little bit harder to work with than others, and that is Electric Ireland. And I would like to propose that we write to Electric Ireland and highlight this, because they've been, Power and I, for example, have been an absolute blessing to work with. They've been quite good, but Electric Ireland has proved to be a sticking point in my own experience. So I'd like to propose that we write to them and highlight this, first of all, and secondly, ask for a specific point of contact, because just through talking to other councillors and colleagues, even around the country, no one's really seems to have a specific point of contact, and there seems to be 5 different customer support emails, and the whole thing's just getting a wee bit ridiculous and slow. So I would like to get that sorted out. So thank you, Chair.
Good thing to do, thank you. Okay. Councillor McAleer.
Margaret, Carlock, yeah, happy enough to second that proposal. Just looking at both pieces of correspondence, the first from the Department of Finance doesn't seem to reference, I suppose, the key issues that I had raised in relation to an issue that affects people in my own DEA, and I know in other Tyrone DEAs that people have contacted me about, and that is post coming with Fermanagh or Fermanagh and Omagh noted as the county. And I know that in recent times it's actually moved on to the digital world, where you will get your weather updates on your phone, and that's now seemingly Fermanagh and Omagh as opposed to County Tyrone. So it's noted in the letter, and I'm aware from the original proposal that we had tasked council officers to follow up and investigate this further, that we can maybe go back to Department of Finance specifically on this request. And also the lady mentioned in the letter, Susan McLaughlin at LPS, in relation to this particular concern. So I would propose that we do that. And in relation to the second letter, I suppose what's interesting about this one is how the author concludes the letter seemingly looking for sympathy for the expenses incurred by this company, as opposed to recognising or acknowledging the effect that extortionate energy companies and energy company prices, who have and continue to completely exploit their customers, those who they purportedly report to serve. All this is stood over by the powerless and toothless office of the utility regulator, which seems to serve as little more than a nodding dog when it comes to the next round of price hikes dreamed up by those same energy companies. And we're seeing that again at the start of April here, as the government funding seems to have lapsed or laxed. So it will be interesting to hear what the update is at this Wednesday's, at tomorrow's meeting with the utility regulator and the Consumer Council, just in relation to that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McAleer. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to maybe go back in history to when the pointer system came in. I was on Fermanagh Council at the time, and we were opposed to bringing in this system. Councillor Brian McAfee was the biggest advocate of keeping the town lands and that, but we were defeated. I suppose democracy defeated us in the Unionists, and the SDLP forced it through at a time when, and remember there was no online petitions at the time, 8,000 people in Fermanagh signed a petition and handed it into the town hall against it. But the SDLP and the Unionist parties decided to go against it anyway, even though some of us that were in the chamber at the time warned that this was going to happen, that town lands would end up being displaced from the addresses completely, which is happening. And the farce of what Councillor McAleer is saying there about Fermanagh and Tyrone, it's happening in Fermanagh, around Coonya and Brewborough. And it really is down to the post office, because the post coming to Coonya and some of Brewborough comes from through Tyrone instead of through the Enniskillen mailing office, and the post office won't change that. So when a letter comes to Enniskillen to go to Coonya, there's a stroke put through it and sent back, and it ends up then having to come through the Tyrone mailing system. So that's where the problem is. And then these big companies all promised us that they were going to come in and sign up to the new system. There was the council had the new system, they had it on file. The companies just needed to come in, buy the piece of equipment and update their addresses, which clearly this has showed never happened. So all the promises that was made at the time weren't fulfilled. I really think the council needs to in the new mandate, needs to take a look at this again. It really does need an overhaul. It isn't fit for purpose. The other thing what Councillor Bell mentioned there about writing to Electric Ireland, I would agree with him. They seem to be one of the worst. But Power NI also seems to, a lot of people that has contacted me has been with Power NI. And in the response, they talked about getting the government who maybe deal with the direct line. But I would suggest maybe that if we are writing to Electric Ireland, and I would suggest we include all the power companies in it, that they give us a dedicated line that we can contact, so that even if government doesn't give a dedicated line, that they provide a dedicated line, so that can be done. So if Councillor Bell would like to add that in, I would propose that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barton.
Thank you very much. It's just, I want to make a comment on the pointer address system. While indeed it states in the letter that this is mandatory now for government systems going forward, is one of the problems with the pointer system not that the various companies, etc., have to pay for it? I think that's an issue perhaps that we have with addresses from some of these companies, that they may not be, the pointer system may not be up to date with them, and having to pay so much per year, etc., may be a problem.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bell, you might have been indicating that you were happy.
Procedurally, I believed I proposed that maybe a month and a half ago. Can we do it again? I'm looking at Alison because she has all the knowledge.
In terms specifically of the
Right.
single point of contact?
Yeah.
Yes, we've done that, but I think it was in relation to the energy payments more generally. We could, in going back, if we're writing back to all of the companies regarding the concerns, we could restate the request.
Absolutely no problem with that. Thank you.
Right. Go now to Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair, and many of us who represent rural areas in Fermanagh will be very aware of the issue being caused by the townland only addresses and the letters and vouchers being addressed to the occupier, which means you could have, say, 2 number 5s, or you could have multiple number 5s within a townland, and none of them would have received their £600 voucher if they had not updated their address, or if the electric company had not successfully updated their address. And the address changes have caused an issue here. I was with a gentleman, just to illustrate this, Chair, if you don't mind me, I was with a gentleman who updated his address 4 times, twice on the phone, once online via an online portal, and once via email. And he still is receiving letters to this day addressed to his old townland address, saying you have not yet claimed your £600 voucher. You need to do it before it expires. And even though he's updated, so there's a big problem here because there's deadlines approaching fast. So I would like to make a proposal, Chair, and I don't know how you want, if you want to roll it in with Councillor Bell's or whatever way you want to do it, take it as a separate, I'm content as long as it's addressed, is that we write to all the electric providers asking that they extend the period of time for people impacted by this Fermanagh townland address issue to be able to redeem their voucher. So they extend the period of time to redeem your voucher. Included in that, we need to ask them to write to all households who have not yet claimed their voucher, to ask them, have they updated their address? Is that the reason why? That they create a dedicated email, probably would be more viable. I would ask for phone line, but email might be suitable, or some dedicated contact point for this specific issue. It wouldn't be that big an issue that they would have to monitor 24/7, but a specific email that, say, individuals, their family or elected reps could contact on their behalf to say, X person at this address their address has changed, they have not received it yet, and that they then, after a period of time to allow for these all to come through, reissue all unclaimed vouchers. I know there's quite a bit in there, Chair, but it'd be a real shame for people to miss out just because electric companies aren't using the proper address system, or because through their own failure to implement dedicated lines that people can't get their address updated and get their voucher. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I'm inclined to take that as a separate proposal, but because it's quite defined. But Alison may wish to intervene.
Well, Chair, it's really just on a practical point as well, and I know there's the addition or quite a bit of detail. I think there is a specific issue regarding the government funding of companies. So while the companies themselves may be flexible, I think there would need to be the guarantee that the government funds were actually there to meet it if there's an extension. So you may have to include within the proposal the appropriate representations, the government department as well.
Okay, that's indicated that Adam's willing to do that. Thank you. Councillor Coyle.
Thank you, Chair. I'll second the proposal from Councillor Gannon. I welcome that Councillor Bell is going to write to all companies, because SSE Electricity is one of my bear bugs at this minute in time. I have contacted Power NI, I've contacted Electric Ireland. You get an email away and it'll take 10 working days to respond, which you never get a response to. I have a large number of constituents not received their £600 yet, and then if you ring, sorry, we can't talk to you because of GDPR, and you're not the account holder, and there's no way of getting this sorted. So I welcome that. And the town lands, I am very passionate, and I fully support the retention of town lands in my address, even though Brendan Hegarty and Alison knows that I spell my town land the way that I want to spell it, not the way that they want me to spell it. So, and Sean Clark, Sean Donnelly, God rest his soul. We made a proposal one night, and I'm still waiting on to try and get that resurrected. So, Alison, I hope that maybe you might take that on, so that there is a process to get the right spelling that we wanted. I know that there's 6 Garveries in Fermanagh somewhere, but I only know 2 at this time. But I do want it spelt the way that I have it spelt. So, and I think my neighbours want to see him. So, maybe I don't know. Should I propose it again, or?
No, I think it's heard, and Alison will check back on the understandings. Okay, thank you. Now, need to tidy this up. So, Councillor Barton, did you want back in on a particular point and then come to Councillor Bell?
Just wondering if Councillor Gannon could also include in his proposal that these companies actually use the most up-to-date pointer system that the council have available, so the addresses will be precise and correct.
Okay, that's incorporated at your suggestion. And the final contributor to this will be Councillor Bell.
Thanks for letting me back in, Chair. If Councillor Gannon is content, I would like to make a slight amendment. He made reference to having it extended for those who are being affected by this townland issue in Fermanagh. I am aware of people within the Oma side of the district that still haven't received the payment either. And if we're asking for extensions, I would like a blanket extension across everyone rather than just those by this specific issue.
And you know this, I should have been keeping a better eye on WebEx. Councillor Fitzgerald has indicated. Councillor Fitzgerald, apologies.
Yes, no bother at all. Thanks, Barry, for letting me in. I was wondering if it would be possible if we could write to the emergency services, the heads of them, the CEOs, asking do they use the most up-to-date pointer system. I am aware from constituents that there's issues of maybe vehicles taking the long way around to addresses such as being used as 6 Mile Cross when it could be actually Loch McCrory, or it could actually be in Mountfield just with a postal address. So I'd like to reiterate the council's that they feel that are they using it? Are they using an up-to-date one? And if they could remedy it as quick as possible. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Anne-Marie. Thank you. Okay, just a seconder for Councillor Fitzgerald's. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly, thank you. Okay, so Alison, will you help us with the variety of proposals?
Chair, thank you. I think just to confirm, Chair, I think Councillor Coffey was content to propose the noting of the various letters, and that was seconded by Councillor Bell. Then we had, on the proposal of Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor McAleer, that we would write to Electric Ireland, that was subsequently widened out to all power companies, highlighting the difficulties of working with them, and based on the suggested amendment from Councillor Green for the companies to put in place a single point of contact, an direct emergency line for elected members. We had a proposal from Councillor McAleer that I think may not have been seconded, that we would write back to DOF specifically regarding the difficulties around the Tyrone addresses, and also liaise with Suzanne McLaughlin in LPS regarding the outworkings of the scheme. We then, on the proposal of...
Alison, you can take it that Councillor Coffey seconded that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gannon, then seconded by Councillor Coyle, that we would write to all all of the electric providers to extend the period of time for them to redeem their vouchers, those specifically who had the address difficulties regarding pointer and related queries, and that we would make the representations to the relevant government departments to ensure the funding is there to meet those extended redemptions, and that again they would put in place a dedicated email line or equivalent to allow such constituents to respond, that they would be writing out to all of the households who have not claimed their vouchers, and would clarify the reasons for that. And then finally, on the proposal of Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly, that we write to the chief executives of all of the emergency services seeking clarification if they are using the most up-to-date pointer system, and encouraging them to do so if they're not. And then just separately, we will check back on previous proposals or commitments given regarding spellings, including Garvery.
Okay, and those various proposals have got the consensus of the chamber, and that's agreed, members. Thank you. Now, I think it was page 3 and page 4 I had been at. So, I'm heading for page 5 and on my way. Councillor O'Coffey, I met him.
I think you might want to take.
Chair, thank you. Again, we have a series of letters here, Chair, just on the 2 resolutions. So I'll maybe just briefly summarise, and then I know there'll be discussion. The first letter is a response which is dated the 20th of March from the Permanent Secretary, and this relates to the second resolution. This is the concerns regarding the lack of funding available within schools for basic equipment, and in essence the letter is saying budgets are tight, but if schools have got specific concerns or issues, then they should make representations to the Education Authority. And then the second letter, which is dated the 24th of March, relates really to the first resolution, which is that we would write back to the Permanent Secretary clarifying the explicit powers that the Council would have under the Children's Authority, and if it could enable the Council to direct the Department or schools to undertake such actions. And the response is that while the Council may wish to seek its own advice on the matter, the view of the Department is that we wouldn't have that power.
Okay. Now, on my screen presently is Councillor Deehan, Councillor McAleer and Councillor O'Coffey, but something happened wrongly in that you were knocked off at the beginning, Councillor O'Coffey, and you did contact me on a matter of any other business, any urgent relevant business. So I'm going to go to Councillor Coffey, then Councillor Deehan in this case.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the opportunity to raise this. Both of these pieces of correspondence are significant. I'd like to propose a note and start off with. The first piece of correspondence relates to the primary school in Mullineskay, which an issue, St. Patrick's, which I'd raised in regard to the absence of whiteboards in the school. This is a matter that's been a contention for a number of years. And parents are fundraising, and it's probably the same across nearly every school. We have desperate rates of fundraising, but with the cost of living crisis, it is completely wrong and unfair for the quality of our children's education to be determined by the ability of communities to actually fund it themselves. We're supposed to have an education system which is actually publicly funded properly. The correspondence here from the Permanent Secretary really offers virtually nothing to the educational well-being of the pupils involved in this. Indeed, the correspondence contains quite an incriminating evidence that they've increased the school's budget by 5% at a time when inflation was running the end of April, 12 months, at 11.7%. That's an effective real terms pay cut to school funding on top of what's already been happening of almost 7%. And at the same time, teachers are being expected to take a 4.3% pay increase, which they've rejected, and well done to them that they're taking strike action, which I commend on the 26th of April. And I hope, I would like to propose, first of all, that this council expresses its support for the teachers who wish for a decent pay increase and for that to be properly funded. The second piece of correspondence relates to education sector cuts. Unfortunately, this correspondence does not detail the cuts that were announced within the last few days, which is the ones I wanted to bring up under AOB. There's a number of very serious reductions to funding for EA programs, including the school holiday food grant. The same permanent secretary said of that I am conscious of the important role that the school holiday food grant scheme has made to low-income families who are struggling financially, particularly with the cost of living increases, but it's to be scrapped from the end of March. The Healthy Happy Minds pilot and Engage programs are also to be scrapped. These, one of which is a program established to pilot the concept of primary school counselling and therapeutic support. This is the most vulnerable children who are going to be denied access to these services. Again, Claire McClelland, Director of Raising Aspiration, this is what the column says, Director of Raising Aspiration, Supporting Learning and Empowering Improvement with the Department of Education, said the department is very aware of the positive impact that the Healthy Happy Minds pilot is having in regard to the Engage program, which is designed to address the continuing impacts of the pandemic on children. She said, we must learn from the excellent practice that has been established as a result of this program. Both of these to be cut at the end of the month. I would like to propose that this council writes to both the permanent secretary and to the Secretary of State, who's effectively the overlord at this stage, to demand that funding for education is not reduced. That the idea that I understand that there's now a 16% cut being proposed in the Education Authority, that is astounding. That is going to destroy the quality of education for the coming generations. And I don't think that we as a council should stand for it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Deehan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to second the noting of this correspondence from the Permanent Secretary at the Department of Education, Dr. Mark Brown. And I also want to second Councillor O'Coffey's proposals. Chair, this correspondence is extremely disappointing, and the developments that have occurred in recent days that Councillor O'Coffey refers to are truly shocking, And I think that it is appropriate for this council to express in the strongest possible terms our opposition to the reduction in funding for what I would regard as essential services for children. And we have discussed, Chair, in the Chamber previously, the importance of nutrition in the development of children and young people, and the suggestion that the holiday hunger scheme be axed is totally unacceptable. And these proposals have caused significant distress, Chair, within the community, significant distress. And parents and teachers are rightly concerned about the impact on families within our community. It is totally disgraceful. In relation to the common funding scheme, which Dr. Brown refers to in his correspondence, this scheme urgently needs to be re-examined and cognizance taken of the very significant pressure that schools are under to provide basic equipment and services for their pupils and students. We all know of the importance of having a fully funded education system. Our children and young people are the future of our society, and we need to ensure that their education is not hampered. And any proposal to reduce an already skimpy budget by a further 16% is wholly unimaginable and unacceptable to me. So in those terms, I want to second Councillor O'Coffey's proposals, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And Corleor McGilla here.
Cormagat, Carlock, yeah, completely happy to support the previous two speakers. I think this is completely outrageous, and whilst it affects all children, and particularly those children coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, it also has a severe impact on the SEN population, and that really isn't highlighted and referenced, I suppose, enough in the communication surrounding this and the communication before us tonight. I do note, and not to reiterate what the previous two speakers have said because they've put it so eloquently, but I think I would like to make a further proposal of this, that as noted in the attachment that has been provided with the correspondence, there is guidance outlined on page 7 there for named children's authorities, of which district councils are one. On the following page, page 8, section 2, places a duty on every children's authority to cooperate with the other children's authorities and with other children's service providers in the exercise of its children's functions. It places a duty on the executive to make arrangements to promote such cooperation, and a duty on children's authorities to cooperate with the executive in the making of these arrangements. Now, obviously, with no functioning and no sitting as executive, that's made all the more difficult. But I do note that later in the attachment, page 19, 5.29 talks about that it's also vital that there is a mechanism for reviewing how cooperation is working. The Act reference requires regular reporting on its operation, including the identification of further opportunities for cooperation. So I would propose that council officers and council officials maybe follow up on that as a matter of urgency, just to see how cooperation is working and what further input we can have. I know the letter from the Permanent Secretary references explicitly legal action. I don't think we need to get to that stage just yet, because I do think there are alternatives prior to coming to that. And just very briefly, on page 27, there is an address there for the Children and Young People Strategy Team. I think we should make contact with them, and I propose that we do so, just to follow up, as well as the budgetary outcomes, the policies that we as a council and as one of these children's authorities could maybe have an impact on. And the one, I suppose, that jumps out at me at the minute and that led to my previous proposal, which brought this correspondence, is the rigidity of school uniform policies. And I think at this time, when people are struggling to pay for electricity, to pay for heating, when they're being forced to pay to wash and dry children's school uniforms every evening, to send them in on the fear of having children sent home because their uniforms aren't up to scratch or they're not wearing the correct items of uniform, that's something that could so easily be remedied, and we take such a burden off families and children right across this district and beyond. So I would make that just as a further proposal, or a couple of further proposals, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGeer.
Well, again, notwithstanding the eloquence of the previous speakers on the subject, I think we can't allow it to go without returning to the same refrain that writing to the department heads at the minute is absolutely of no benefit. They have no clout, they have no finances. We're in a desperate state. We're looking into a new mandate of the council when we're not even aware of how our financial restraints are going to be in the incoming mandate. So I just need to put it on record that fundamentally what we need is the reformation of the executive to adopt a budget that is suitable to cover all the needs of our people over all the departments, because it's getting shocking that every time we get a letter, it's just one telling us that they're further without any budget. So just to say that, Chair Gurmagat.
Thank you, Gurmagat. Councillor O'Rahilly.
Thank you, Chair. And notwithstanding my role as Chair of the Board of Governors on St. Kevin's and St. Mary's Primary School, respectively, I think while I agree with most of what has been said here tonight, I also want to add, not alone has a number of those programs been cut, but it's the way in which they were cut with 1 day's notice. And this is the lives of young people that has been affected in a really drastic way by these cuts, but it's also staff. it's also people's livelihoods that we're delivering these programs. And I think that has to be noted too, that even in this day and age of cost of living crisis, there is little excuse for one day's notice by a department to implement these cuts. The other point that I want to make, Chair, is about the school estate and the overall lack of ability to move forward with programs to repair, reinstate, to do a lot of the work that needs to be done to allow schools to maintain health and safety, to maintain buildings in good repair, to be able to educate people in a safe environment. Those are coming under tremendous pressure here with budgets, and we're not seeing movement by the permanent secretary to be able to get these programs out through the door. We're finding also that more and more schools are actually feeding children, not alone through lunchtime providing of meals and so forth, but also taking food home. This is where we are in 2023 with children at school, and through the free share food schemes that are implemented in schools, and with the help, Chair, of grants from this council, schools have been doing tremendous good work in being able to literally feed families. And while Councillor McAleer's experience has been in difficulty with school uniforms, there are a lot of schools that provide the free uniforms, that provide opportunity for children to wear their own clothes if they haven't got uniforms. So I think it's not fair to brand all schools on the same vein, and I think there is innovative work going on in many schools to be able to understand and respond to the cost of living crisis. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bell.
Chair, thank you for letting me in here. Firstly, I just want to add my comments of disgust to the holiday hunger payments being cancelled. That again, as Councillor Riley recognised, such short notice. It came quickly and it came brutally, and it did have a real detrimental effect on our friends and neighbours who were relying on that support. But I do want to talk about specifically about the Happy Healthy Minds programme, because it has made a bit of media attention. But here's the thing: see, if you do a wee bit of research into it, its effect on the West and Northern Ireland has been less than the East, for the simple reason many of our schools were not availing of that programme anyway, simply because the providers are less west of the Ban. 70% of schools, I believe, partook in the scheme, and although we don't have the data yet, I think it's a fair assumption that most of the schools didn't partake are west of the Ban. Now, I will be lobbying, and I am confident that when Stormont is restored, a similar scheme will be brought back in. That's I think we all need to lobby to do. But lessons have to be learned from the Happy Healthy Minds scheme now that we do have this chance to look at it. So if Councillor O'Coffey is happy, I would like to amend his proposal slightly, that we write to the Department of Health or the Permanent Secretary of the Department of Education as well, and highlight this. Just highlight the fact that if a similar scheme is to be brought back in with a new Stormont executive, they need to look at the ground level, and they need to look at the actual people who can provide the service on the ground, because they are lacking west of the Ban, and there's no point in making a scheme if the West again is discriminated against. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so all contributors who indicated have spoken. I'm going to go to Councillor Coffey to round up.
Yeah, I'm happy enough to accept that, but I also like to second the proposal from Councillor McAleer. Thank you.
Okay, so Alison, can you assist us now?
Yes, so Councillor O'Coffey, seconded by Councillor Deehan, noted the various letters, Chair, and also formally expressed the Council's support for teachers and their efforts to secure fair pay. We then, Councillor O'Coffey, proposed, seconded by Councillor Deehan, that we'd write to the Permanent Secretary and the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland emphasising that the education budgets must not be cut, reiterating the schools are under huge pressure, the wider cost of living crisis, the impacts that communities are feeling, and the need for those setting budgets to be cognisant of this. And also to just reflect Councillor Bell's more recent comments that should the scheme be re-implemented or reinstigated, it needs to be fit for purpose to ensure that areas west of the ban are equally able to avail of it. We then, Councillor McAleer, seconded by Councillor O'Coffey, specifically regarding the children and young people strategy, that we could investigate what work actually has been undertaken, make contact with the Executive Office or the relevant officer who's identified. Chair, I think if Councillor McAleer was content, and notwithstanding the comments around the absence of an executive, but this is the Department of Education's strategy. And I think in trying to find out what has been done, certainly around the outcomes, we should be seeking a formal update from them because they're the accountable body in relation to the delivery of this and ensuring there is the connectivity across government and child supporting agencies. And I think they were all the formal proposals, Chair,
Okay.
if Councillor McAleer is content with that.
Okay, I think that's agreed, members. Agreed. Okay, thank you. So, in matters raising, continuing on, there's a matter there in page 5, for example, Alison.
Yes.
I proposed it myself, and I see the response here relating to gambling and trying to establish what are the referral methods to services. What services are there for families who are struggling with the issue of gambling addiction? Is it defined as mental health? Is it not? So we're getting some answers here. And if you want to maybe help us with the letter, then I'll give my initial response, then bring in other councillors.
Okay, Chair, certainly. So the council had a number of, I suppose, specific queries, essentially how gambling was defined, whether it fell within the definition of mental health services, the referral method, if it did fall within such services for those with a gambling addiction, and to clarify the support that the Trust had available. So in essence, Chair, the letter is saying gambling addiction does not fall within the definition of secondary mental health services. Our voluntary-led service provision commissioned through the Public Health Agency is the best route, and there are then they make reference to the existing community addiction services in the Trust, and particular reference to family and carer supports.
Okay, thank you. My own initial response to this is that at least it clarifies, it answers questions that I wanted answered. Gambling addiction does not fall within the definition of secondary mental health services. And then, I mean, where do you direct people? Where do you direct them? Supports are available through self-referral to voluntary sector providers commissioned via the Public Health Agency. Alison, I would like to propose that we write to the Public Health Agency to establish who are the voluntary sector providers in this council area, in the southern sector of the Western Trust or in the Western Trust, and what are their contact details. Because I was in attendance, some other councillors and elected representatives were present as well at the station centre last week, and where the Oma Boys and Girls Club, not directly related to gambling, but relating to mental health support services, they produced a new leaflet, and I would like to congratulate them on the work that they did to produce that leaflet, and again write to them to thank them for that. They have a new piece of literature to add to the body of literature for people, you know, in terms of accessing mental health services. But when I was arriving at the venue, I was kept late by a phone call from a local family who were pleading for help. So I just thought 15, 20 minutes in the car park, arrive late for that event. And yet I was kind of helpless in terms of who I could refer this family to. And a family that contacted me, I would say they're facing the disintegration of the family as a result of what gambling is doing to the family. And, you know, I need to get back to that family with answers. You know, is it the Dunlewy project? Is there a Dunlewy project based in Fermanagh House? I'm not sure. You know, I need to know and we need to know. And I know this is something you've spoken about as well, Councillor McLaughlin. You know, I'll come to you in a wee second that you've had a similar understanding or experience of this difficulty, you know, like where do we refer people to? So it's not good enough. there's a disintegration of a family, as I see it, at their wits' end, and I'm not sure where to get support. And can you imagine people beyond us who are less connected than us? How would they get through the system? You know, obviously a GP is central to all of this, but you know, a GP is challenged as well, I'm sure, as to where to refer. So I'll bring in Councillor Deehan, who's next.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, I would like to propose to note the correspondence from Mr. Neil Guckian, Chief Executive of the Western Health and Social Care Trust. Chair, I note you propose to write a letter of congratulations to Oma Boys and Girls Club for the excellent work that they have done on mental health services. And I want to second your proposal. They have done excellent work in terms of mental health services, and previously the PCSP funded them, the same group, to do a project on drug awareness. So excellent work being done in the station centre, and I support it 100%. In relation to services for those with a gambling addiction, Chair, you were quite right to bring this matter to this council. Gambling addiction, problem gambling, is very widespread, and there have been a number of high-profile sporting figures who have very generously shared with the public their own journey in addressing gambling addiction. And that journey, Chair, is a very painful one, not only for those afflicted, but also for their families. Mr. Guckian is quite right in that there is no secondary mental health service provision for this cohort of patient. He does imply that if someone who has a gambling addiction has coexisting substance misuse disorder or mental health disorder, that their needs can be picked up through the community addiction services or the mental health pathway. But I believe, Chair, that gambling addiction is such a difficult condition that it merits having statutory provision within the Western Trust. Gambling addiction is a mental health disorder, Chair. It is classified as an impulse control disorder, and associated with that, you have a wide range of psychological and physical health difficulties which need to be addressed. So I would propose, Chair, that we would write back to Mr. Guckian and ask him if he would consider putting in place statutory standalone provision for those with a gambling addiction. In relation to the community and voluntary organisations supporting those with gambling addiction, I am aware of the services of Game Care or GAM Care, and they did a presentation last year to one of our neighbourhood renewal subgroups. Very informative. They are a voluntary organisation. They run the National Gambling Helpline and provide support, information and face-to-face contact with those with gambling addiction. So I think that possibly we need to publicise for the moment the excellent work that they do.
Okay, Josephine, thank you.
Proposal, Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is something that I have a very keen interest in, and I'll not go into the medical terms as Dr. Deehan has gone into, but I know from experience how difficult it is to break the cycle from addiction to gambling. It affects your whole family, and it has a severe effect on your own health as well as those around you. The fact that we're depending on voluntary organisations from whatever fund, there is no clear pathway. One of the pathways that the government generally accept is the people, the gambling sites are directing you to contact them, and they will direct you how to get help. That seems quite ridiculous. That's like taking a poison and the poisoner telling you, I know somebody can give you the antidote for it. It's quite strange that we don't have a clear pathway in this day and age. And it's not just gambling, which is one addiction. There's other addictions as well where people aren't there isn't a clear pathway of how we can get them to help. I mean, with Pete and Sadie, who tragically lost a son in Enniskillen and have set up a charity themselves, and they go out and help people. And that is a very personal thing for them. And I know Pete rings me infrequently, but he keeps saying, "And how are you?" And that's because he wants to know whether I'm still on the wagon or not, because he knows a gambler never stops. You just stop putting the money on, but you still have that wee notion in the back of your head that you can still have another go at it. So it's something very personal, and I think that again, it's something that's showing how we're lacking, and it has a long-term detrimental effect on the health of the people around them. It's sort of like a preventative cure, and I can't see how they can't establish some clear pathway that we can direct people down.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll second the proposals as well.
Councillor Coyle. Debbie.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is very important to me as well, because but I'm just wondering if, I think I asked last month as well, the Gambling with Lives, who John just mentioned, Peter and his wife, that's their charity. I think it's the only one that's not financed through gambling organisations. And we have already proposed, and it's been accepted by council, that they come in and do a presentation. And I'm just wondering if the council have contacted Peter yet. And I know it might be difficult doing it this side of the election, but really the sooner the better, because it is it's affecting so many people.
Okay. Come now to Councillor Irvine.
Thank you very much, Chair Barry. I'll have to declare an interest because I'm a director in PHA, and the conversation has directly gone round to that and lobbying it. So I'm taking no further part. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add my support to Councillor Dean's proposal to write to Omagh Boys and Girls Club. We went to the night and we got these here leaflets, and I think they're absolutely fantastic. Everyone involved in the project was under the age of 18. And if that doesn't make you proud of our young people, I don't know what will. And I know myself and Councillor Thompson got very good at the sandwich room too. So that was an added bonus. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I wasn't really going to come in, but this issue I've raised it not at the very early part of this term repeatedly around the legislative change that's actually needed to enforce meaningful controls on gambling. And we hear a lot about what can't be done because there's no stormont, but there was a stormont for many years and there wasn't too much done on this issue. I'm afraid there's a significant vested interests that some parties I don't believe want to face up to. And the reality is that this is a toxic industry which makes profits by ruining the lives of, in particular, anyone that they get it, but it impacts in a greater extent on working class people, simply because of the deprivation and the context. The reality is that what we need to see is legislation brought forward to actually make it much more difficult for these sort of gambling machinery and so on to be accessed by people in various environments where this habit can be fed and developed. But as yet, we have seen no action on that. And I know that that is something that many activists on the gambling issue in Fermanagh are very, they've been disappointed by the lack of response that has come forward from Stormont when it was up and running. But unfortunately now, we'll have to wait and see when it gets back up to see if they'll do anything eventually. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. In the last mandate, myself and Councillor John Feely seconded my proposal or my motion about gambling, and we were looking for the government to change the rules to ban all gambling adverts on television. And unfortunately, at this stage, as of yet, if you watch Premier League soccer, or if you watch any of the top sports events, they're still being sponsored by gambling companies. They're hiring famous actors who should be ashamed of themselves for associating themselves with it. Talk about selling your soul for a gold coin. And I think it is disgraceful that the government hasn't dealt with this yet. Drink and alcohol and cigarettes and all is banned, the adverts now, and I would contest that gambling is at least equally as bad for society as them. In fact, even from that motion, it has got worse, because I have seen young people as young as 13 and 14 with gambling apps on their phones, and gambling as they sit there, possibly even in the classroom, and how they get a gambling app and get signed up to it, I have no idea, but it's an absolute disgrace, and the government should be ashamed of themselves that has let this happen. Premier League soccer is probably the most watched sport on these islands, and for the government to let them advertise and basically destroy young minds by this version that is cool to gamble, I think is an absolute disgrace. And I don't know what maybe we should write to the government again to ask where that has went. Why have they not banned it? And maybe even write to the whoever organisation is over the actors union or whatever, and ask why that they would shame themselves to be associated with destroying young lives.
Okay, thank you. So, everybody has spoken that wished to speak in that discussion, and I'll ask Alison to sum up what proposals are on the table. Yeah, okay, so thanks, John.
Chair, so firstly, just the correspondence was noted on the proposal of Councillor Deehan, seconded by Councillor McCloughery. We then, on your own proposal, Chair, seconded by Councillor Deehan, that we write to the Public Health Agency to clarify who are the voluntary providers in the southern sector of the Western Health and Social Care Trust area, their contact details, etc. And then separately, that we would write to the Station Centre to commend them on the recent event and the I suppose the work that they are doing around gambling addiction and the associated mental health challenges with that.
In that case, gambling addiction doesn't pertain
Oh,
just
sorry.
mental health services.
Oh, beg your
mental
sorry.
health services leaflet.
Mental health services, sorry, thank you, Chair. Then that we, on the proposal of Councillor Deehan, seconded by Councillor McCloughery, that we write back to the Trust to ask them to ask the Chief Executive to put in place statutory provision regarding gambling addiction and the associated supports. And then on the proposal of Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor McCloughery, that we would write back to the government, restating the previous desire of the council in terms of the banning of advertising relating to gambling, and also to Equity, who I think would be the actors' trade union, just in terms of actors who are participating in such advertising campaigns. And maybe, Chair, just in terms of Councillor Coyle's query, we do have a backlog of informal meetings. We are trying to, and so that is certainly on the list, we are trying to see, Chair, if these can be facilitated over the next couple of weeks, but mindful that members are also very busy, but it's been very hard to get slots, but we are doing our best.
Okay, thank you. And that's agreed, members. The course of action outlined in the various proposals. Agreed. Okay, thank you. So, page 5, page 6, and Emmett, Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's in relation to the paragraph to conclude 9.2, where in response to a member's comments and dissent against the use of the JCB equipment, the Chief Executive stated as per legal advice received it would be inaccurate and imprudent to consider the use of JCB equipment as contrary to BDS. I would query, if that's the case, then why on the 26th of January this year, the official BDS movement posted online, the message states institutions and corporations supporting apartheid Israel are now not just complicit, they have Palestinian blood on their hands. escalate all BDS campaigns now in the direct aftermath of the Jenin refugee camp massacre. That tweet messaged JCB by name. In the summer of last year, the investigative website The Canary reported how JCB's boycott of Russia only highlights the company's racist hypocrisy, because for years campaigners have been asking JCB to do exactly the same thing for the people of Palestine. And finally, on Sunday the 2nd of April, which is only a couple of days ago, the Palestine Solidarity Campaign tweeted, "We have enormous respect for the work done by the NSPCC, but are extremely disappointed by their continued whitewashing of JCB's complicity in crimes against Palestinian children. Please help us remind the NSPCC that every child is worth fighting for," before posting a link to a letter and an illustration stating JCB must end its complicity in Israel's human rights violations. So with all that in mind, Chair, I would like to reiterate that I stand by my previous comments. I reiterate my dissent in permitting such companies claim a social licence in the way that they are trying, and I would urge my fellow councillors to do likewise. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, just ask Alison to respond.
Well, Chair, I'd note the comments. Members will recall, I think it was Paul Loughlin, QC at the time, KC now, who provided advice and gave certainly a contrary narrative to what has been presented this evening. Obviously, I know some recent social media activity has been quoted, but certainly that wouldn't have been the advice we received.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move on. Page 7. Okay, page 7. Over to Alison.
Yes, Chair, just to note now, there are a number of items of correspondence relating to this item. So I appreciate they're all on the same issue, but all slightly different emphasis. So if you just bear with me for a moment, and I appreciate members may wish to comment. So specifically, Chair, we have correspondence from the Ulster Unionist Party, and this is in relation to the Council's really urging for the executive parties, the various political parties in the Northern Ireland Assembly, for the executive to be reformed, supporting the Council's position on that and emphasising the need to have the executive in place to ensure protection of services at South West Acute Hospital. By the way, Chair, I'm reporting these in date order to you, so hence to link with the agenda. The second letter is from the Chief Executive of the Western Health and Social Care Trust, Mr. Gockian, who's advising in response to our queries regarding radiology consultants that one international recruit has arrived and is based in the South West Acute Hospital, and 2 further international recruits are expected, one at the beginning of May and one towards the end of June. We then have a letter from the Vice President of Sinn Féin, Michelle O'Neill, MLA, again welcoming the Council's urging of the re-establishment of the executive, or the reforming of the executive and the reconvening of the Assembly, and stating Sinn Féin's support for the reinstatement of emergency general services and the wider concerns about South West Acute Hospital. We then have, Chair, which was previously circulated to members, the e-briefing to public representatives, MLAs and MPs, dated the 28th of March, which is a general update, but also, if I could refer you to the letter I sent on the 16th of March to Mr. Gockian, does deal with some specific inquiries, specifically the rheumatology services and the detail regarding why these had been changed without prior notification, and requesting their full reinstatement, and also if there were any proposed changes, or indeed if there'd been any moves on gynecological or maternity services from SWA to OMA. And those are detailed in the latter part of the e-briefing responses to that. We then have a letter, Chair, from the Permanent Secretary of the Department of Health regarding rheumatology, as we had been asked by the Council to make representations there. And the response is that the department has asked the Trust to contact us directly on this matter. So quite a number of correspondence just on these matters, and all slightly different emphasis, Chair.
Okay, I'll go first to Councillor O'Coffey.
Thanks, Chair. Procedurally, I'm happy to propose to note these correspondence in tandem, if that's agreeable. The one I wanted to speak on is number 4, which is the e-brief correspondence. I think that this is once again a very dishonest response from the management at the Western Health and Social Care Trust. And I feel that they're making a habit of being less than open with this council. There are a number of assertions within here. For example, that the hospital retains Type 1 ED status. We all know that that requires a 24-hour surgical provision on site. But the reality is that this status is now hanging on the fact that there are, in fact, consultant obstetricians on site in the hospital on a round-the-clock basis. Now, that's very far away from the reality of what you'd expect from an emergency department. You've not got the same provision. We do not any longer have urgent or emergency surgery at SWA. Likewise, they deny the existence of the golden hour, despite the fact that the 2015 trauma triage policy adopted across Northern Ireland sets out a 60-minute target for access to emergency surgery in those cases, and they're not even that unusual. People like having an animal crush or that sort of accident can require falls from a height twice your body height. And indeed, this policy was actually reduced to 45 minutes in the last few years. So it's the golden 45 minutes, as we all know, and have a recall from maybe the stroke campaign where we actually referenced the golden 45 minutes. There's more evidence for it. But this access has now been lost in our area. And indeed, in response to the journalists questioning them on this matter, the Trust appears to believe that the commitment for 45-minute access time does not actually extend west of the ban. There can be no greater confirmation of our second-class citizenship in this part of Northern Ireland in regard to access to life-saving NHS treatments than such a claim. And I think it's a disgrace. We are increasingly witnessing emergencies now in our area in which the police are the first attending, and those involved in them are being asked to make their own way up. This is the reality. The ambulance service is entirely dependent on overtime, which is unsustainable. There's insufficient numbers of vehicles in place, and the budget is not there to support them in any case. And then you've got private sector on top of that. There is concern over rheumatology, cardiology, and even maternity now. The domino effect, which we warned about, is coming true, unfortunately. And Councillor Coyle, only a meeting or two ago, revealed that babies are already being born in Craigavon. That's the future writ large, I'm afraid.
Half a minute left.
Okay, coming on the back of revelations in regard to wider mitigations put forward which have collapsed in reality, in contact with reality, against the context of a sham post-factum consultation exercise, the people rightfully have no trust in the Trust. And I would like to propose that this Council write to the Permanent Secretary and the Secretary of State, the Overlord again, to demand a fully independent public inquiry into the handling of the current crisis by the at SWA by the Western Health and Social Care Trust, and indeed into the circumstances surrounding the current crisis that they have created over the last number of years. And I'd like to end just by congratulating all those involved in the tremendous community grassroots campaign to restore services at SWA. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go now to Councillor Keenan on WebEx.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I agree with all of them there, and as well, like the concerning elements. The first thing, I suppose, is that the Trust has claimed and still claims that the closure of the emergency general surgery at the SWA is temporary, and they're still claiming this while showing us no actions or measures that they're taking or planning to take to reopen the emergency general surgery in Enniskillen. In fact, they're actually doing the opposite of what they have told us in this letter. They've advertised for and continue to advertise for 4 full-time consultant general surgeons to be based at Galvin, not at the SWA. And they're saying this will maximise the capability of the elective stay centre on the SWA. This is not a solution to reopen emergency surgery in the SWA. It actually seems like a plan to permanently close emergency surgery at the SWA. And the other thing is, I think Donald touched on the golden hour. They're saying that is now defunct and out of date. But as Donald says, the trauma triage tool that they actually use and is used by the health service states that in a red or amber trauma situation, that 45 minutes is a safe travel time to receive emergency surgery. So by their own admission, in my view, it seems that the Western Trust neither intends to reopen emergency surgery at the SWA, and they seem willing to do this by disregarding the current safety guidelines. So I'd be happy to second Donald's proposal, and I'd like to also make a second proposal on the back of that. I'd like to propose that we write to the Trust outlining our continuing dissatisfaction, and we write to the Department of Health, and also stating that we as a council stand by the Save Our Acute Services 5-point plan, which is calling for a separate trust for the southwest area, for the trust to be split up and divided, and to enable us to address our own issues here that we're having. That's point one. Point two, to restore the urgent emergency surgery services. Point two, the new initiatives to ensure settled workforce where all staff, including consultants, are respected and valued. Number four, surgical specialities, new surgical specialities being introduced. And number five, to relaunch all 5 theatres to provide emergency care and the elective hub in tandem, not either or. So that's my separate proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second Councillor Keenan and fully support Councillor O'Coffey's proposal previous to that. I think what we need here is the Permanent Secretary to step up and to call for a full public inquiry into what's happened at the Western Trust and the mismanagement of which we've seen, of which we've highlighted, and is clearly coming from within this council, highlighting the mismanagement that's happened up there. The sham of a public consultation that took place, of which we still haven't seen any of the minutes for. So if Eamon is happy enough to include in any letter that we request that the minutes of all the public consultations that took place are provided, that we continue to pressure the Western Trust to provide them in full without redacting any part of it, because, like is already stated by the chair of the Save Our Acute Services Group, Reggie Ferguson, we don't trust the Trust, and Mr Guckian really needs to consider his position at this stage, because as a council we have really struggled to have any confidence in them.
Councillor Deehan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And like other members, I share their concerns regarding the acute surgical services at the Southwest Acute Hospital, and the prospect of having those services reinstated really depends on the ability of the Trust to recruit not only general surgeons but also a range of other consultants to address the issue of clinical codependencies. So I do welcome Mr Guckian's correspondence informing us
Can I
that...
ask councillors just to keep their voices down? You know, there shouldn't be side discussions, because Councillor Deehan deserves the floor here and needs to be listened to.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So I do welcome Mr Guckian's correspondence that the Trust has been successful in recruiting 3 consultant radiologists. One international recruit has arrived and is based at the Southwest Acute Hospital, and 2 further international recruits are expected. So that is progress, Chair, but the prospect of recruiting consultant general surgeons is very difficult, and unfortunately, and this is something that I had really only realised quite late in the day, the pay that is offered to consultants in Northern Ireland is below the pay which is offered in Great Britain. And I mean, we have often wondered, Chair, why it has proved so difficult to recruit consultants to a wonderful place like Fermanagh and a state-of-the-art hospital like the Southwest Acute Hospital. The fact is that no one is going to move to Northern Ireland to take a pay cut. And that is something I feel that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. Accordingly, I would propose, Chair, that we would write to the Permanent Secretary at the Department of Health, bringing to his attention this anomaly and asking him to investigate why this situation has arisen, to appraise him of the impact, the negative impact on consultant recruitment, not just to the South West Acute Hospital, but also throughout Northern Ireland, and also to explore measures by which this inequity can be redressed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and I fully support the calls for an independent inquiry into the management of the Western Trust and the actions that have led to this. I think it's worth bearing in mind that the two latest or most recently built hospitals are in the south of the Western Trust. And I think that the inquiry needs to look at why those hospitals were indeed built and how they have been led to this position. So I'd like to see that included in a public inquiry or brought to the attention in that proposal for the public inquiry. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so all speakers who wish to speak have indicated. No, not so. Corleor McGear.
I'm going to Carly, just on a point on the proposal there from Councillor Keenan that the council should adopt the 5-point plan. I think all members received an email this afternoon or this evening sometime. I certainly read it, where SOAS have the opportunity to address their 5-point plan directly with the trust. Now, not questioning any of the facts and figures that some of the members have presented to the chamber, but again, I hear one person say one thing, I hear the trust saying another. I think it would be timely for us to withhold our support for the 5-point plan until we hear the discussion directly between SOAS and the trust next Wednesday, I believe it is. We all received an email just on that point of procedure, because I think there are facts and figures that have been issued without any major verification on both sides. So I think I certainly wouldn't be supporting the 5-point plan at this stage as a council until we hear the discussion directly with the trust, because surely that is the result that SOAS are looking for, to have a direct discussion and explanation of their points there. Chair.
Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly to come in on the back of what Councillor Maguire's just after saying, our party won't be supporting the proposal either until we get more details and hear what has to be said next week. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, if I just may, on a couple of aspects that were mentioned, and as much something for clarity, just in relation to the Savour Acute Services presentation of the 5-point plan, it's actually tomorrow as opposed to next Wednesday. So it's tomorrow at 12 noon at South West Acute Hospital, and all members have been invited. Now, I do appreciate that time slot is also the time when we're meeting with the representative from the Cuban embassy. But it's obviously a virtual meeting, so I don't know if that can be accommodated, but it's just to clarify, it's 12 noon tomorrow. I would also say, Chair, that we did receive, following the council's submission or adoption of the draft consultation response, we've received a very complimentary feedback from representatives of Savour Acute Services to advise that they were content of the alignment between our response and the 5-point plan. So just perhaps to note that. The other point, Chair, to note is in relation just to Councillor Blake's comments, and I know there was some media coverage on this a couple of weeks ago, just to advise we have never actually sought the minutes of the consultation events. It hasn't been requested previously by the council, so this would be the first occasion this evening that we would be doing so. So just to clarify that.
Okay, now I have two councillors indicating both have contributed to the discussion so far, so it would need to be in the spirit of helping to tidy up proposals, that type of thing. I'll go to Councillor Armstrong first, then Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, it's my understanding that this email invitation refers to the presentation of the of a collation of letters from the public tomorrow. It's not a presentation it's not a presentation made to the Western Trust. It's a presentation of the documents that have been signed widespread throughout the community. So it's a delivery of the consultation responses, and I'm sure maybe other members are aware of that too. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Deanna is very correct. It's a delivery of 30,000 letters, 30,000 letters signed by people in Fermanagh and Tyrone who are supporting the 5-point plan. It's not an actual presentation, not anything new the Trust doesn't know or we don't know. So 30,000 people are calling to support this. I stand by my proposal. I think as a council we need to support it. I think it's the right thing to do. And that's what I am proposing. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so
Sorry, Chair, that's not as I read the email that we received today. SOS have arranged to present all of our 5-point plans to the Western Trust staff on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Or does it say petition? It doesn't say petition, sorry. Is there a mistake in the way I read it? But certainly I don't see any indication of figures or numbers of petitions, etc., in the email I received, Chair.
okay, so Alison, how do we proceed on the basis of confusion, perhaps?
Well, Chair, I think certainly my understanding, the email is described as presentation, which may be causing confusion, but I haven't had any discussions with Save Our Acute Services, but I think it is the submission of the community campaign in terms of tomorrow. I think the 5-point plan is the plan, excuse me, largely that was presented at the special council meeting by representatives when they were here. And there has been a very significant community effort over the last number of weeks to ensure there were community signatures in advance of the consultation deadline. So I think that's tomorrow's event. And the invitation really is, excuse me, from SYS to ensure the councillors were aware of it and obviously to invite you along. Chair, it appears to me, I think just there's one in terms of the proposals. I certainly would, if you wish, I'll summarise those for you. But I think we have most seconded, with the exception perhaps of one. So in terms of Councillor O'Coffey, seconded by Councillor Keenan, that we would write to the Permanent Secretary of the Department of Health and the Secretary of State to seek that a fully independent public inquiry is established which considers the circumstances which have led up to and the subsequent temporary change in terms of emergency general services at South West Acute Hospital. How and why did it happen? And I imagine there was a willingness to incorporate Councillor Armstrong's suggestion that specifically how the hospitals were selected for these locations in terms of Enniskillen and how the situation has arisen. We then had the proposal by Councillor Keenan, seconded by Councillor Blake, that the council supports Save Our Acute Services 5-point plan, and there's been some dissent expressed around that. And we then had a proposal from Councillor Deehan, which I don't think has been seconded, Chair, that we would write to the Department of Health, highlighting the anomaly in pay of consultants in Northern Ireland as opposed to consultants in the rest of the UK, seeking clarity how this differential has emerged and how this inequity will be addressed.
Councillor Garrett is happy to second that proposal. Thank you. Okay. You do indeed, but with unanimity, you might say around.
It would appear no other dissent.
So
You might just want to test.
okay, I'm going to go through the 3 proposals then, if you didn't mind. So the first one there, Alison, just read it out.
Okay, so we have the noting I should have advised as well, Chair. But so the first proposal is that we write to the Permanent Secretary of Department of Health, Secretary of State, seeking the establishment of a fully independent public inquiry.
Okay, I think that's agreed, members. Okay, agreed. And then go to Councillor Deehan and Councillor Garrity's.
That's then that we write to the Department of Health, highlighting the anomaly in paying consultants in Northern Ireland, and that we seek that to be remedied and how the inequity can be addressed.
Okay, I think that's agreed, members. Okay, we'll move now to the final proposal.
That we, Councillor Keenan, seconded by Councillor Blake, that the council formally supports the 5-point plan as set out by Save Our Acute Services.
Okay. Okay, so there's significant enough consent or dissent to record to seek
A recorded vote to the chair, sir.
Okay, thank you. Just get that set up, is right.
Just a reminder for those who haven't been in the chamber, they'll have to log in. So,
no,
yes. Oh, yeah, no, but
yeah.
Just a 4 remote, I think, is that right, Hannah? Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Ready to go then? So the vote is live in the chamber now, isn't that right? And what about WebEx, Alison?
WebEx is also live, yeah.
WebEx also live, so we'll go now.
Just waiting for the WebEx. It's also live. Hey, Chair, so there were 21 votes for, 13 votes against, and 2 abstentions, so the proposal is carried.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, we're going to keep moving now. And we were at page 8, I would say, or 9.
Yeah.
8 and 9. And Councillor Keenan just asked you to take your hand down if you didn't mind. 8 and 9. And 10. Okay, 11. 12. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. No, it's just in relation to the motion as passed at the last council sitting. I think it is hugely important that that last paragraph is included. That members objected to the motion in full, given it went beyond calling for simply condemnation of the horrific attack, which I think was unanimous across the council chambers, but included the call for full and unequivocal support of the PSNI, given perceived feelings in the past, and I suppose not just the past. It's hugely important that that was highlighted because that was the bone of contention on the night. The motion brought by the UUP, because I'm aware of attempts on the night on how this was being spun, obviously in the run-up to an election. What I also note is that in the days following the passing of this motion by the majority of this council, the following headlines were reported on the BBC website. Strip searches of under 18s by PSNI to be reviewed following concerns from the Children's Law Centre and calls from Amnesty International for the practice to be ended. Army and police accused of cover-up over the use of plastic bullets, which was following a spotlight investigation. Police detention officer charged with terror offence after publishing images on social media in support of the UDA. Over 15,000 police officers accused of violence against women and girls. Ex-PSNI officer jailed for underage sex offences while on duty, during which the judge, Mark Reel, noted this offence represents a serious assault on public confidence in the police. The fact that these offences were carried out while already under investigation by the Ombudsman aggravates the degree by which this offending affects public confidence in the police. Patricia Foy, senior PSNI officer, dismissed for drink driving. 26 PSNI officers investigated for alleged sectarian misconduct in 5 years. That was in the Belfast Telegraph. And back to the BBC again. Police officer's former partner tells Belfast court he raped her. Now, I don't know about other members, but I'm surprised that so many of them felt they could offer full and unequivocal support to such a force. So I stand by my comments previously, and that's on top of the aggravation that is ongoing within my own DEA chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCloughlin.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it was a previous matter I wanted to speak about. I'm very disappointed with Councillor McAleer's comments, and I don't believe all of them relate to the PSNI, but that's all I'm going to say on that. I will however, like to go back to item 15.2 with your permission, Chair. Myself and a number of other councillors, along with the Chief Executive, attended today at the Maynooth site, where they unveiled a world first in a machine that produces concrete or cement products. And they've halved the carbon that it produces. It was amazing, and their plans for the future are something that I believe could be innovative for this council and the other councils in the district that neighbour that site. It's absolutely amazing what they're proposing to do. We also had NSERC presentation from Fiacre O'Donnell to the Climate Change Resilience Group on Monday evening, and what they're planning to do out there as well. So I think there's very, very bright things for that Darlin area in our future, and I hope that this council is in a position to avail of what's going to be happening out there for the good of all of our community.
Thank you. Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. Well, just to come back in to the comments by Councillor McAleer, I struggle to see why he chose to bring them in at this time when all we're doing is going through the minutes to ratify them on any matters arising. Nobody is saying that there is not bad eggs in the PSNI, but I think certainly a lot of the comments tonight they weren't called for, and certainly our party brought the motion, this motion forward. We didn't bring it forward to electioneer, and that has come up before, and that is quite annoying that this has been, and I'm hearing comments behind me as per usual. But we didn't bring it up to electioneer. This was a serious matter which we wanted to highlight, and certainly we stand over that anybody with information should pass it on to the PSNI. Whether some individuals within this council have no faith in the PSNI, I would say the majority of individuals in this council have faith in them and would be bringing stuff forward to them. Thank you, Chair.
Corleor McAfee.
Armagad de Caherly, just to return to the point that Councillor McCloughy raised, I would agree with what he had said there. There's definitely pioneering and innovation going on in the Derrylin area. Within 1 week, we've had 2 very positive stories of sustainability, and I think it is a step forward for companies to come out and say we are big carbon emitters. We have a big role to play to get into net zero, and you can clearly see that work has been taken seriously out in Derrylin area with the 2 companies there. So, 2 new bits of equipment, new technology that is going to help these companies become carbon zero while delivering services that are valuable and needed in society. So just to praise what they're doing. And of course, I'd like to maybe make this point as well, that often the blame for carbon emissions can go in the wrong places. Sometimes it's unfairly pointed towards agriculture. And we know that that isn't necessarily true. And so I think it's, as I say, it's important when there are carbon emitters that they admit that and work to prevent it or work to decrease it. So just leave my comments there. Gormagad.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I was the one that proposed the motion, and I do just want to make crystal clear that was not electioneering, and I actually take a bit of offence to even suggesting it was. In the words that I was allowed to speak whilst proposing the motion, I made it clear that this sort of action has no place in Omagh, and I asked that the council, as an entirety, condemn what happened. But that was important, because I do think as civic leaders, it's our duty to play our role in stamping out that sort of behaviour. But over the past 2 weeks, little stickers have been appearing around Omagh, encouraging people to join a dissident Republican paramilitary. Now, that's why this civic leadership is so important, because we need to ensure that our young people aren't dragged into whatever chaos those organisations wish to bring. But whilst on the topic, I do want to thank the staff of Omagh Leisure Centre who helped me remove a few round there, and thank our staff for checking the premises throughout the council. I hope we can keep an eye on it, because it's a disgrace, and I think bigger questions need to be asked about who's funding them and who's putting them up. But I will leave that up to the PSNI, who are an incredibly effective force, and I'm sure they'll do their jobs well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, then it'll be going to Councillor Keenan.
Yep, thank you very much, Chair. Well, I suppose it is disappointing that Councillor McAleer raises us at this stage, grouping through matters arising. I don't think there's any call for him to be repeating what he said basically the last night. Can I just put it on record that the Democratic Unionist Party grouping in this council fully support what the UUP brought forward in the last and that last evening, fully support the police service of Northern Ireland and everything that they do. Thank you very much.
Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair, and I would like to thank Councillor McAleer for bringing this forward again and making us aware of the events and things that have been come out in the public eye in recent times, you know, and some of the previous speakers said they're disappointed that, but if you look at some of the crimes that Mr. Councillor McAleer has described, rape, corruption, collusion and criminality, the victims of these crimes deserve to be represented, and they deserve a strong voice, voices like Councillor McAleer. And as I said at the time when this motion went forward, to give unequivocal support to anything is ludicrous. And as I said, the likes of Nazi Germany give unequivocal support to the SS, and we all know where that ended up. But anyway, it was a ridiculous addition to the motion, and I think it's a fair point by Councillor McAleer. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're concluding on this discussion. Aren't any proposals in there? We've concluded on that discussion and we're about to move on then. I think we're at page 12, 13, 14. 14. Yes. Over to you, Alison.
Just to note, Chair, corresponds from the Education Authority regarding Queen Elizabeth II Primary School, Kilskeary, and the Council's opposition to the proposed closure. And this is the acknowledgement from EA of our opposition. And again, similarly, Chair, we are working to get the informal meeting scheduled. That's something we're trying to get progressed.
Thank you. Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you. Happy to propose a note and thank the Council for issuing this letter, and glad to see that the objection will be included, and we look forward to the meeting with them. Thank you, Chair.
And I've got a second for the note, Councillor Garrity. Thank you. And what's that? Page 14. Councillor Donnelly.
Apologies, Chair. I should have just declared an interest.
You're okay. 100%. Corlior McGill.
Thank you, Chair. It's in relation to 26.2 and the plan for public inquiry. And I know that this was addressed just at the last meeting, but I would like to, I suppose, get clarity or get confirmation that at a minimum, those involved in the council representation at the public inquiry will have read the full planning application, whether that's our planners or whoever it may be, and that obviously the current ongoing breaches of planning conditions at the site in question are noted and brought towards the public inquiry. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And page 15. Do you, Alison?
Chair, just to refer members to the correspondence in the other folder, which is received from TransLink just earlier today. So it's item, sorry, I'll find it here. Well, it's in the, it's in your other folder, and it's just in terms of the early bird reductions and the indications from TransLink that they're not in a position to revisit that given their wider financial pressures at this stage.
Okay. Just propose to note maybe, or go to Councillor Donnelly.
Chair, I'm more than happy to propose to note, although I do just want to make a comment on some of the sentiments that have been expressed here, because I think that any member of this chamber can express sympathy for the fact that all government departments and agencies are experiencing pressures in terms of their budgets. And indeed, I would reiterate Alliance's call for the institutions to be re-established on a sustainable and reformed basis so that we can actually provide a focus to that task. But I think that in terms of some of the comments that have been made later on in the correspondence, in terms of these included early bird discounts representing 39 early morning journeys out of the 12,500 services TransLink operate each day. strikes me as an attempt to almost trivialize the importance that these actually represent, because these journeys, although they may be limited in the grand scale, they do represent a significant and specific purpose, particularly for students and workers who need to travel in order to access their job. So it's a disappointing piece of correspondence, but yeah, I'll leave it there, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, my focus on public transport is really to do with funding. Northern Ireland, I think, is the only place in the whole of Western Europe where public transport is not actually funded directly by the public purse. There are contracts, for example, to the school delivery contract, and there is the compensation for free transport for senior citizens, but there is no support per se for public transport. This is really, really unusual. Anywhere else you see it. And it has to be said that TransLink, considering that, and also considering the fact that they have probably a greater level of, we may think it's absolutely dreadful in our areas, but if you compare what is provided, for example, in regions in England, where the councils have had to step in to re-establish public transport companies because there is literally no provision anywhere in rural areas, they're actually doing a really amazing job in a way. And that reflects, I think, primarily the fact that public transport, one of the few things we have got right, I think, in Northern Ireland, is that we have a single company, a government-owned company, no privatization in the sector, and that there is an ability for economies of scale, for interconnectivity to be brought into place, and most importantly, for cross-subsidization from the gold liner routes, the 25, that actually produce nearly all the profit of the company, which then goes to sustain routes in rural areas. Now, I don't pretend for an instant that there is adequate funding for the public transport provision, but the blame for the current problems is not really with TransLink, in my honest opinion, or with the drivers. It is actually with Stormont, which has never funded public transport correctly. And you look at the rest of the world, they're moving ahead at a rate of knots. They're investing colossal sums now in public and mass transit systems, which are going to enable our transition away from reliance on the private car, which is coming to an end within a matter of years. So we need to wake up to what is happening in the rest of the world and see what we can do as a society to catch up. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is that matter dealt with? Okay, thank you. So page 15, and that's matters arising dealt with in that particular meeting. And then move to item 6 on the agenda, matters arising, special council meeting the 16th of March. So I'll go through the pages individually. There's 8 in total. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7. 6, Alison?
Well, it's really just at the bottom of the resolution, Chair, just to draw to members' attention the correspondence received from the Housing Executive congratulating the Council on the adoption of the local development plan and indicating the continuing commitment of the Housing Executive to work with us in the next phase of the process and also in our community plan as well.
Okay, I'll just look to Councillor to note that correspondence. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly. I think Councillor O'Coffey was seconding there. Okay, thank you. That's that matter. So we move now till item 14 in the agenda. How many other items of correspondence have we to deal with, Alison?
I think we've about 12, Chair. That's just a working estimate.
That's good, that's good. Good, we're very pleased about that. So do you want to take us through the first one? Yeah.
So, sorry, Chair, the first item is from the Department of Health, and this is specifically regarding outreach services. It was representation that we had made to the department, and they've advised in the first instance that the responsibility is something that's an operational matter for the Trust, and they have just provided some further information, particularly with regard to engagement with Lakeland Community Care and Inspire Wellbeing. The Council had obviously made separate representations regarding that, Chair, and also the budgetary announcement detail is included within the correspondence.
Councillor Deehan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alison. Well, first of all, I want to propose to note this correspondence from Mr. Peter May. the Permanent Secretary. His response, Chair, is extremely disappointing. We all know the importance of outreach services for the elderly. We are fully aware of the impact of COVID-19 on the mental health and well-being of our elderly population due to isolation and lack of contact with the community. And certainly adult daycare services are essential, in my view, particularly for the elderly. Mr. May, in his correspondence notes that the provision by the Western Health and Social Care Trust has not yet reached the pre-pandemic levels, and he cites difficulties in staffing arrangements. You know, it's very concerning to note the reduction in places for adult daycare, very, very significant reduction in the number of places being available. And I think that this is very regrettable. Mr. May did state that contracted independent providers continue to receive their agreed funding, but we all are aware, Chair, of the increasing costs of energy in particular and the increased cost of providing services. Mr. May also references the need to continue to exercise tight control on expenditure. Chair, why is it that the elderly have to bear more than their fair share of changes to their services, you know, for the purposes of economies? I think our elderly population require increased investment given their vulnerability and taking into consideration their elderly years and the contribution that they have made to our society. So I would propose, Chair, that we write back to Mr. May and also to the Western Trust, continuing to express our concern regarding the reduction in places for adult daycare, and ask that every measure is implicated that will ensure increased provision in this area and return to the normal level of provision as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second both the noting and the proposal. I would just like to add in, obviously, everything said there by Councillor Deehan, I think, has addressed the consequences of this situation entirely, you know, fully and comprehensively. But obviously, you don't have to be a follower of Adam Smith to know that if you're not going to provide enough pay, then you're not going to get enough supply. And the main problem is that the carer provision and care profession has been chronically undervalued for many, many years. And this is leading to a massive staffing crisis. And it's the same staffing crisis we see across our NHS, unfortunately. So I believe that the important role here is for direct employment contracts by the NHS provider, as opposed to reliance on the independent sector, which I feel is now suffering chronic market failure. So thank you, Chair. Happy to second.
Okay, thank you, Donald. Thank you, Councillor. That's proposed and seconded and agreed, members. Agreed. Okay. So the next item of correspondence, is that the DFC one?
Yes, Chair, and that really is just for noting, just confirming the rollover, if you like, of the council remote hybrid meetings legislation from the 25th of March when it was due to expire, and that now goes towards the end of September, 24th of September.
Okay. Thanks to Councillor Robinson and Councillor Bell for proposing and seconding that. Okay, the noting of that correspondence. Is the next one then to do with local election fees and expenses scale?
Again, just for noting, Chair, just final confirmation as to the scheme.
Okay, proposed by Councillor Armstrong and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Thank you.
Now we move into the other folder then, Chair.
Yep, the other folder of correspondence.
Okay, Chair, the first item is from colleagues in Mid-Ulster District Council confirming the council's support of the council's concerns regarding the consultation in relation to South West Acute Hospital. And as you'd have seen, members in Mid-Ulster spoke of the benefits of the facility and agreed to respond to the consultation on that basis.
Okay. Proposed by Councillor Gannon and seconded by Councillor Maguire. Okay, thank you. Next up.
This is a letter which emanated, Chair, from Regeneration and or perhaps Environmental Services. Sorry, it's regarding the Private Tenancies Act, and this is specifically that the council's request that the department enshrine in legislation the same no-fault protection against evictions as legislated for in the rest of the UK. So really, the department has just set out their position, the research, and the research which is still ongoing before they can give any further commitments in this regard.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Councillor Coffey. Okay, well, Councillor Dean.
Chair, may I belatedly declare an interest in this item, Chair? Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose to note this response, although I think it really reflects just how much of a missed opportunity has been the Private Tenancies Act. We're seeing the issue of housing in the Republic of Ireland is now probably easily the #1 most important issue, and every day you see more and more revelations around, the precise issue of protections for tenants from eviction. And yet we have seen in the situation in Northern Ireland over the last 4 years where we've had a functioning executive and ministers in place and no action's been taken on the very same issue in Northern Ireland. So I do think it's very unfortunate that we have this sort of dichotomy, but it's the reality we have to deal with. Happy to propose the note. Thank you.
Okay, and a seconder to note will come from. Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. Thank you. Next up.
Yeah. Chair, there's a few items at the seat later as well about the post-election arrangements. So this is from NILGA, and this is really their immediate steps that will follow the council elections. The dates are set out. I suppose the key issues from our perspective that there will be 8 members from each council, 10 from Belfast, who will participate in full membership. Further breakdown of the wider membership in terms of some groups, and then the overall date by when NILGA hope to have their own annual meeting and their executive committee, which is scheduled for the 23rd of June. So we'll obviously reflect that into our arrangements for the annual meeting. So just for your information.
Okay, and I'll take a proposer, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Rennie. Thank you. Proposed and seconded.
Okay, the next item, Chair, is from Jason Donaghy in Fermanagh Community Transport, expressing thanks to the Council for its support and specifically of members in terms of lobbying for the increased funding, or this, I should say, the retention of funding for Fermanagh Community Transport and also for EasyLink. I suppose just to note, Chair, this is probably a reprieve more than anything, so it's just 3 months. And as you'll have seen from the email, there continues to be very considerable concern about the sustainability of this service and the wider financial pressures.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McAfee.
Well, good Carly, happy to note, but of course I do want to just say, while the reprieve is positive news, there still is a very serious challenge for Fermanagh Community Transport and that essential rural service that's provided. So I would just state unequivocal support for the work that they do, and hopefully the lobbying will continue and that this service can be maintained. It is a vital essence to the people in rural communities, and I know firsthand of the work that they deliver. So I will be supporting their campaign to extend the funding.
Okay, and Councillor McClary.
Thank you, Chair. It's obviously good to hear that they've got a reprieve, but it's not sufficient. It needs to be much more than that. The amount of people this affects is unbelievable within our DEAs. You go and stand outside the Swan, you see the buses regularly turning around that roundabout, both picking up and dropping off people, and that's not to cover what else they're doing in our area in our north, the Bonacre. There's 3 days a week that depends on transport coming from across the district to that. So it's amazing what the service they provide on the funding that they get, and it's an absolute disgrace that they're still sitting in with the hatchet hanging over their heads, and only 3 months before they get again back to the same position, and we'll continue to fight for them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And that's that matter dealt with. Thank you. Alison, next up.
Item 5 in the other folder, Chair, is the response from the department. Members had agreed that we would write to the department in relation to the UK policy on managing radioactive substances and nuclear decommissioning. restating our opposition and also advising the Council's membership of the Nuclear Free Local Authorities Committee, and this is just a response from the Permanent Secretary.
Councillor McLeod.
Thanks, Chair. No, appreciate and thank the council staff for taking this on following the request at the last meeting, and welcome the response. I'm happy enough to note it. I think the final paragraph that Katrina Godfrey can advise that no radioactive waste is the sole stuff here and that there are no plans to site a GDF here is to be welcomed. But I do think, just given the content prior to that, in terms of the dire outlook on citing waste, is one based on voluntarism and partnership. It's one that we do need to keep a watch and briefing, but happy enough to propose the note at the minute, Chair.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair, and again, glad to see the response. I'm just wondering whether the Chair would give me a wee bit of latitude to bring up an issue around the farming, given this is a Department of Agriculture. And because there's no agriculture liaison meeting before the new mandate. It's in relation to, I would be proposing that we write to Katrina Godfrey as the Permanent Secretary in relation to a major issue that has developed over the last number of weeks and months, where the department is writing out to farm businesses who haven't been active in the last 5 years. Now, that can be for one reason or another, through sickness, through different things, waiting on a young person to be old enough to take over. There's a number of different things, but this could affect 5,000 to 10,000 farm businesses. They're actually stroking them off the record if their business ID, which could have effect on family farms or that applying for planning. It could have an effect on farms that are set in their land and their entitlements if they've no farm business number, and so it could have a huge effect on the farming industry. And I would like the council to write and ask: was there any consultation done with the farming industry in relation to this decision by the department? I would like to know who ordered this policy. I'd also like to know, was there a Section 75 impact assessment did on it? That's just some of the things I'd like to ask, but I know appreciative if you let me in. So I would ask the council to write on them things and pointing out the seriousness that the council sees this policy from wherever it came from, where it could have a really serious effect on the farming industry and farming families throughout our district. So that's my proposal.
Margaret Caherly, just to formally second Councillor Green's proposal, and you would hope that the department has a better understanding of the sector for which they're responsible for.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so where are we now?
Chair, we're on item 6 now of the other folder. Chair, this is a letter also from DARA in relation to the council's representations regarding the animal welfare budget. And just to note, I think we should be concerned about this. You'll have seen the tone of it generally is, first of all, advising not only will there not be an increase, but certainly in the third paragraph underlined, there may not be any funding for this function going forward, which clearly would present us with extremely difficult situation. So at this point, we would just be noting, Chair, but I think it's perhaps a worrying indication of what's likely to come.
Okay, and flagged up for the incoming council as well. Okay, Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Happy to propose to note this. It is genuinely worrying. Animal welfare is not something that we want to see go by the wayside, and the fact that the block grant is no longer adjudged to be able to sustain funding for councils to do this is frankly disgraceful, and it will have significant impacts for our ratepayers, but also the functions that we provide. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, and thanks to Councillor Rainey for seconding to note. Thank you. Okay.
Next letter, Chair, is Northern Ireland Office. I appreciate we discussed educational matters earlier, but this was very, very specifically regarding free school meals, and the NIO is just advising that this is a devolved matter around education, and it really is up to the department and the relevant education leads as to how this money is spent.
Thank you, Chair. Now, proposed to note, I think, as is becoming kind of all too common, that this letter just puts the blame onto someone else. And the Secretary of State, you would think, would be well aware that there is no minister in place to make this decision, so he should be taking some of the responsibility here, and he's completely abdicated that. So it's very disappointing. I think it is something that we do have to keep an eye on. I know the outgoing minister did promise a review and did suggest that a review was being undertaken in terms of providing free school meals, hopefully to all school children. But the idea that as a matter of savings, provision of school crossing patrols and the makeup of school meals were going to be the first things that were expenses were looking to be cut was one that is hugely concerning and hugely worrying. So we'll continue to watch this space and to lobby strongly on this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to, or not happy, I'm very disappointed to propose to note this. The skeptic in me is thinking that due to the lack of response from an education minister or a permanent secretary for education, they're waiting until our pre-election period because we've already seen shattering cuts. We've already seen cuts to our education services, and I fear that this is the one coming next. And we, as the last vesture of local democracy, won't have a say to help prevent it. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, and you did propose, and I'll ask Councillor McAleer to second the noting of that, I think. Or maybe you did propose. You did propose. Okay, then I'll take yours as a second, and just wasn't sure on that point. Thanks to Councillor Coffey for keeping me right. Okay.
We've dealt with item 8, Chair, in the course of matters arising. So just item 9 is from the Northern Ireland Policing Board, and it's setting out the arrangements for the recruitment for independent members. And they also indicate, again, they will be in touch with us regarding the political members, which will also be considered at the annual meeting. So just for noting again,
Okay.
please, Chair.
Again, thanks to Councillor Riley for proposing to note and Councillor Robinson for second to note. So that's noted.
And
Thank
then
you.
item 10 was dealt with in the course of matters arising. That was the TransLink letter, Chair. So that concludes
job.
all correspondence.
Thanks very much, Alison. So we're now at item 15. Now, if we look at the clock, it's close to 5 to 10. We want to get through the notice of motion and 4 or 5 any urgent and relevant business items. So just enter into the spirit of it if you can. See that phrase? That's a great phrase councillors have. Can you give me a bit of latitude? What does that actually mean? Does that mean I know I'm allowed to speak for 3 minutes, but I want more? Give me a bit of latitude. I like that one. Okay, that's one of my favourites. Okay, so moving on to item 15, notice of motion. This is proposed by Councillor O'Coffey and seconded by Councillor McAleer, and it's relating to living wage. So over to Councillor O'Coffey.
Thanks, Chair, and I hope I won't take up my 7 minutes. It's an issue that I know councillors will have heard myself raising previously, but we've never really formally made it as a motion. And previously, we've always been told that there are obstacles in the way in terms of for the council to become a fully accredited living wage foundation employer. The issue of wages in our area is obviously of concern to everyone at this time of mounting cost of living crisis. And the statistics in our area are quite stark. The average basic pay in Fermanagh and Omagh per week, this is the basic pay, £404 a week. That's gross. The average for Northern Ireland is £440 a week. That's about 10% more. The consequences of this differential is that people in this area work longer hours substantially to try and break even. And that has massive impacts for work-life balance and so on. But even Northern Ireland as a whole is massively behind, say, for example, the UK, 8.1%. So the Northern Ireland average is actually 8.1% lower than the UK average, and it is very substantially behind the average in the Republic of Ireland. Real earnings in Northern Ireland fell by £28 a week last year. That reflects the rise in inflation, but it also reflects the failure of pay to keep pace. Northern Ireland is pretty much the joint lowest, had the joint lowest increase in weekly earnings in the UK over the year, and is the third lowest in the UK. Approximately 13% of all jobs in Northern Ireland are categorised as low paid, which is a record low. This is the lowest proportion in Northern Ireland in the last 20 years, and the third highest proportion in the 12 UK regions, as they call them. The proportion of jobs paid below the national living wage and the national minimum wage fell to 2% in 2022. Well, that's illegal, you know. This is almost double the pre-COVID rate, but is well below the 2020 and 2021 rates. These statistics tell a story of our area being a low-wage economy. It also tells how you get a lot of in-work poverty. We hear a lot of, you know, when you think of poverty, you often hear people saying, oh, well, that's people that don't work hard enough. But the reality is that half of people going to food banks are actually working, and you have food banks being used by professionals right across the economy now, and including nurses and so on. 1 in 4 children live in poverty in our society. And this reflects the very real legacy of underinvestment, peripherality, capitalist failure, I would say, but also low trade union density. We have a relatively rural economy where there's a large number of small employers, and it's not very easy for workers to use their leverage to actually secure improvements. Therefore, making an improvement above the minimum wage, which the Tory government renamed the national living wage to confuse everyone, the minimum wage, which is paid to those over 23, also known as the national living wage, has risen only recently from £9.50 to £10.42 per hour. The real living wage, as calculated by the National Living Wage Foundation, is based on the real cost of living, and at present it is £10.90, and it is likely to go up substantially in the future as it starts to take account of the inflationary spike we've suffered. The proposal really sees for this council to take the step of becoming a national living wage employer. We already pay this to our employees directly. The impact that this will really have is that the council would set the bar for local employers and businesses who want to be our suppliers, who want to have contracts with us, and who want to win support from this council, that they too have to pay a living wage to their employees. That is not too much to ask, really. And I would also highlight the fact that I know that it has been stated to me as in the past when we've tried to raise this as a proposal that it is not within the ability of a council to take these steps. But Belfast City Council has recently taken the steps to bring this forward, and I think we should definitely make the decision now that we want to bring forward the steps necessary for us to become the second living wage employer in Northern Ireland. So this proposal really resolves that we need to see a report on the next steps so that this will take this action forward. And I'm happy that I'm bringing forward this proposal after these 4 years, because I think this would make a real contribution, regardless of whoever's in this council. This council could take the lead in terms of raising the bar for workers in Fermanagh and Omagh, and by doing this, we are going to encourage and challenge all the employers to step with us. And finally, I would say it may not apply to everyone, obviously, as relatively small numbers, thankfully, are below the living wage overall. But by raising the lower bar, we will increase the all pay, because all pay is produced as a differential from the lowest. And those who are trade union organised obviously can win improvements above that. But this is really for those who don't have that benefit. So that's it, Chair.
Okay,
thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor McAleer.
I'll not take my 7 minutes either. Firstly, I would like to commend Councillor O'Coffey on bringing this motion to tonight's final council meeting of the current mandate, and indeed commend him on his efforts not just through the current cost of greed crisis, but through his efforts across his recent term on council and beyond, where he has fought for working people and the working class through his every action. I'm very happy to second this motion. Of course, we must all realise that this current crisis, labelled widely as a cost of living crisis, is a political choice, one taken with contempt following years of austerity by a heartless government who cannot and do not share a shred of empathy or compassion for the most vulnerable in our society. the very people governments and elected officials should be working hardest to protect. Throughout this term on council, we've witnessed, in the face of and indeed in spite of this naked aggression against the people from those in power, the coming together of workers through the trade unions and through collective strike action. From those strikes involving healthcare workers back in 2019 when this council was formed, to the historic nurses strikes, action taken by education welfare officers and lecturers, postal workers, refuse collectors and council staff, on to the more recent actions taken and planned by teachers. Trade unions and trade union action has been a source of unity and unification in an all too often divided political landscape. And yet we still, as workers and as humans, face further aggressions from the top down. Threats through government policy and proposed legislation aimed at curtailing the strength of trade unions and the right to protest. That's the reality and the legacy of this Tory government, and it's one that I believe will ultimately do more to unite than it ever will to divide, which is obviously what its key aims are. Focus on your fellow workers, not those with their foot on your neck. One small but significant step we can take tonight to set an example for other local government authorities and indeed local businesses is to adopt this motion, and that this council expresses its intention to become the North's second fully accredited living wage local authority. We've witnessed the hardships endured by our staff who, during this current mandate, have been left no other option but to take industrial action to try and garner a living wage that allows them to survive. We've seen too the simultaneous effect that this has had on our local residents who have not been able to avail of the same services they have come to rely on. This is something we cannot, in good conscience, allow to be repeated, and so I urge all members to support the motion and to progress this call tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We've heard from the proposer and the seconder, and we'll continue this in a short second or two, but I want a proposer and a seconder to extend the meeting. Councillor McAleer and Councillor Gannon will take. Others were willing to extend the meeting by half an hour, obviously. And Alison, do you want to make an intervention now? And then I'll go to Councillor Gannon.
Just very briefly, Chair, in case there's any ambiguity, the council is a living wage employer and there was no relationship between the strike action which was undertaken and living wage. It was to do with the National Pay Award. Just for
thank you. Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll do something I don't normally do and keep it very brief. Thank the councillors for bringing forward the motion, and like all the other councillors in the chamber, I'm definitely proud of our record as a good employer and one of the biggest employers in the district, providing much needed economic benefit to the district and the people here. And as we already pay our employees a proper living wage, I'd be more than happy, and the party would be more than happy to look at the next steps required and to support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, this is a very important issue. During my time as a council, in the council the last 3 years, we've spoke about food banks, mental health, poverty in general, and one of my favourites, community wealth building. Although we have yet to see any fruits of that, but I'm sure you'll hear more of it next year if I do manage to get in. But as we all know, poverty is very real in our council area, and it's not just designated to those who do not work. It's now a reality for the majority of workers, and this is a result of capitalism and its exploitative nature, where the minority thrive whilst the majority suffer. So I do fully support the motion brought forward by Donal and Emmett. It's a step in the right direction for those who seek to increase profits at the expense of the working class. And I do accept, and I do, Alison's quite correct, that this council is a living wage employer, and I hope that this motion would filter out to the wider community and we would all see the benefit of it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Eamon.
Thank you very much, Chair. And likewise, I'll be short. I want to welcome this motion being brought forward and to lend Alliance's support. I mean, I think it very much touches on a lot of the work that we've seen in the Rural Affairs Committee, and indeed it kind of points to the particular relevance that this has to Fermanagh and Omagh, in the sense that on account of our rural economy, we do have a particularly low wage economy, which points to a wider issue in terms of the need to diversify so that we do have higher paying jobs. But in terms of what this motion is presenting, the need to actually raise the floor in terms of social protection to ensure that all workers, no matter what workplace you work in, have that protection and have that income to be able to live a good quality and standard of life. So, Chair, I'm more than happy to put on record my support.
Thanks, Stephen. Councillor Donnelly, thank you. Councillor Green.
Yeah, I have to admit I'm a wee bit confused on this here. Is this motion going to make us do anything different than what we're already doing? Could the Chief Executive just clarify that there before I say any more?
Mr. Chair, happy to clarify. There would be a number of steps required to become an accredited living wage employer. And I know reference has been made to Belfast. I think it took Belfast probably 18 to 24 months from the initial concept right the way through. So it is really, as Councillor O'Coffey has summarised in his presentation, the council would seek, in terms of contracts and other supplies, that anyone who would be delivering services on behalf of the council would also be living wage employers. So the council, so if you like, from our perspective, it won't impact us from a human resource element because it's what we're already doing. It is more likely around our procurement, our contractual arrangements with third-party organisations. That's where the difference would be.
Yeah, no, thanks for the clarification. Yeah, I know it's something from the new council was up and running, even at Shadow Council. I know I was trying to get these social clauses in myself and my party, and I think we got a long way in doing it. And listen, if this motion helps to put it across the line, that's great. I have no problem with that, and it would be good. That would be the second council after Belfast City Council to do that. So yeah, I see no problem with that.
Councillor Dean.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I just want to thank Councillor O'Coffey, Councillor McAleer for bringing forward this important motion. I'm very pleased that Fermanagh and Omagh District Council is a living wage employer. I think that this motion will really take us forward to the next step in the process. It is so important, Chair, that when people work hard, that their earnings should enable them to live comfortably. And I think as a council, we should utilise every resource to ensure that those who provide services for the council also support the living wage. So happy to support, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. My former colleague, Councillor Baird Wilson, if he was here, would be pointing out that there's many in our agricultural sector who don't even know what a living wage is. They're working day in, day out, and they're not even meeting a minimum wage. So on Baird's behalf, he's not here. I'm going to put that point in because he would have if he had been here.
Okay, thanks very much. The plight of the farmer. John, thanks. Okay. Councillor O'Coffey, you're summing up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you for all the comments that have been received. And I had an initially stronger version of this, but I have taken direction from the Chief Executive because the aim is here to secure a step forward on this process, and I think it will be a very important one. I just reiterate and clarify that this is becoming an accredited, fully accredited living wage employer. It is actually the next step, as has been stated by the Chief Executive. It's certainly good to hear that we have cross-party support for that. I would just add that obviously if we can successfully use the council procurement budget and other aspects of this to encourage employers generally to pay the living wage in our district council area, then that would obviously underpin wider change across the labour market in general, and that would necessarily possibly increase the likelihood that agricultural workers in particular would be paid a living wage. And I would just highlight to the member there, Councillor McCloughery, that there is obviously the rulings of the Northern Ireland Agricultural Wages Board, which continues to exist, thankfully, despite the attempts of some in the last Stormont executive to collapse it. and that the Northern Ireland Agricultural Wages Board actually sets the lower bound for wages in the agricultural sector. What we need to see is actually enforcement of those decisions to prevent the sort of rural poverty that we are seeing in many sectors of the agricultural market. And indeed, and I have to say it in passing, disgracefully, we also know about modern day slavery that exists in the agri-food sector in this part of the world. So I'm happy to see the support coming forward, and I do hope that this yields a transformation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. So just put it to the meeting then. I think that's agreed, members. The proposed and seconded motion has been agreed, is being agreed. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, we're now at the any urgent and relevant business stage of the meeting, item 16. Now, I know that Councillor Deehan and Councillor McAleer were in discussions, with officers, but you may wish your item still to be tabled. But I'm going to go to Councillor Rainey first, and Councillor Campbell wants to come in on the same issue. So Councillor Rainey is going to be first.
Well, thank you, Chair. And the proposal that I would like to bring before is on behalf of the Siskinore Rural Community Group, Chair. And they're very anxious that their position in relation to the forest in Siskinore would be brought before the full council. Siskinore Rural Community Group is a very capable organisation with members possessing a wide range of experience, knowledge and skill. And the group was formed in 1999, and the group is made up of very capable people that I can testify to. And they want to highlight that they have 4 members on the committee with young families. Forest development always on their agenda. Over the past 2-3 years, it has been a special focus. Feasibility study prepared January 2022 at a cost of £10,800. Fermanagh Omagh District Council grant of £2,000. And then Deirdre's Tripsy Fund announcement is imminent. They want to make that known. Fast growing village and another 37 houses approved recently. And yes, Siskinore is certainly a growing hub. It's really the place where people want to live. The group has developed an excellent vision and plan for the future stage development of the forest, with phase 1 including 4 action points: the upgrading and extension of the existing forest trails, the upgrading of the main forest entrance and car park, on-site toilet facilities including disability access, and a suitable covered meeting / educational space. Forest Service here is for Forest Service. Here is the tricky and sticking point. Forest Service requires a formal, legally binding agreement to be placed before entering into a partnership with a hired party to ensure clear lines of responsibility, accountability and governance for management of a public asset or activity.
So have you a proposal now, just to tidy it up, Alan, given the time?
Allow me to finish this because I'm under real pressure from them.
Okay. Just
Did you talk about latitude, did you, Chair?
I'm all with you, but we're going to run out of time for other items.
Well, it won't take very long.
Right, okay, go for it.
Okay. Well, Forest Service is in a position to enter into a formal lease or license agreement with each other for the development or management of the forest. And it has led responsibly to leisure provision and is keen to support Siskinore Rural Community Group To date, the main type of partnership agreements between Forest Service and third parties have been with regional councils through the lease of the forest assets or a license of a forest-based reconciliation activity. Here is the proposal, Chairman, that I propose that Fermanagh and Omagh District Council should take immediate steps to enter into a formal lease with Deirdre's Forest Service and submit an expression of interest to Deirdre's Forest Park Enhancement Fund to enable Seskinore Rural Community Group to realise its vision for the development of Seskinore Forest as set out in the group's feasibility study. And lastly, Fermanagh and Omagh District Council should continue to liaise with Seskinore Rural Community Group and, where appropriate, other statutory bodies in relation to the development of Seskinore Forest.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. Moving now to Councillor Glenn Campbell, and I think I have to close it down at that. How do you feel about that, Mary? If I close it down and other West Tyrone councillors kind of have to, time-wise, So I'll go to Glenn Campbell now, and then Alison wants to comment. Okay, Glenn?
Caherly, and thank you for allowing this item under AOB, and I want to support the proposal as outlined there by Councillor Rainey. I was at that meeting between